Hey folks, just a little note here at the beginning. This episode cut out twice while we were recording it. We had to restart the live stream twice. We had power outage and a storm and an internet outage, all kind of at the same time. So we had to edit it all together. It should be mostly unnoticeable, but just in case you were there during the live stream or if you notice anything a little wonky, well, that's why. Other than that, it should be a perfectly cromulent episode. The sowing has occurred, and it was red and terrible and red. That's, of course, a line written about Melisandre's first appearance from Cressen's point of view, the first chapter of A Clash of Kings, but it clearly fits nicely here, in my opinion. R'hllor is the god of fire and shadow, but Vermithor, played that role today, or yesterday, or whenever you watched it. The Sowing of the Seeds was epic, an achievement. Another example of this show looking more like a series of movies than television. I guess that line is starting to get blurrier and blurrier, but still, it looked like it belonged on the big screen. And I would love to see it on the big screen someday. Maybe we'll all get that chance. But it wasn't just a spectacle, of course. In terms of the story, this is a bona fide game changer. Every strategy employed by the Blacks to this point was conceived with Vhagar in mind, getting around her, dealing with her. She's the big threat. Now, apparently, they can match her, outnumber her. The tables have turned. The characters who claim dragons did so in a variety of ways and possess a variety of personality traits and background and bloodlines, not all of which are fully known or understood. Not to mention who they were pales in comparison to who they are now that they are dragon riders. It's quite a power to invest in someone. It's quite a power to receive, as if from nowhere, something you wouldn't have expected to be possible. And a major theme of the episode is faith in the gods, and the dragons are gods in this setting. But they aren't the only gods, of course. The seven are omnipresent, and we have an execution in front of a werewood. One could easily see that as an offering or sacrifice. Were the many victims of Vermithor not also a form of blood sacrifice, an offering to a godlike being? You can certainly look at it that way. And who the gods choose, what the gods provide, and how the humans perceive this. When you speak for or go against the gods, there can be consequences. That goes just as much for dragon keepers as it does river lords and many others. Along with those higher powers, we've got the action, the blood, the plotting, the dragons, the seeds, the questions to carry forward in our minds, because this was the penultimate episode of the season. So we've got all that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome back to our review of episode 7. We will not have any spoilers today, as we always do not have on Mondays.
Well said.
I could have written that a little better, but I think I got the point across. And every Saturday we do preview episodes filled with spoilers from the books, from trailers and all that. And, well, we'll be doing that over in New York this Saturday. If you're in the New York area, come join us at City Winery, where our episode will be live. And, of course, we'll be back this time as well next week for the finale. How's it going, Sean? How you doing? You enjoyed that episode, I'm sure.
I did. It was great. It might be on the lower half, but even the one I like least, I still love. So that's not too negative.
Nice.
And sometimes I wonder how much it's the episode versus the things that happen in it. I'm frustrated that Rhaenyra sent all those people to their deaths. I wish I could have been handled differently, but
yeah, that's something we'll talk about today for sure. If you've got questions, send them to us live right now and we might answer them. Or if you're catching this later, send them over to westeroshistory@gmail.com and maybe we'll answer it on a future stream or just respond to you via email. As well, I will be mentioning some other things during this episode that relate to a lot of things during the season. So we are basically turning into look back mode as much as we are looking forward, because the season is getting close to the end and we want to see, like, connect the storylines from beginning to end and look at these things as whole arcs. But of course, there's so much to come. And of course, a lot of what will happen in the final episode will just set up a lot of more things to come. Pita Chick says, I love how Silverwing said, if my husband gets a rider, I want a rider. Looks at Ulf. Well, you're here, so I guess. I mean, Sean, as a cat owner, and Shay and I are cat owners, you understand that some animals just pick what they like and there is no accounting for it.
Yep. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but I think they're specifically trying to keep it inconsistent
Right.
what or if there are rules for riding a dragon.
Absolutely. In fact, they said that in the behind the scenes content that Ryan Condal wanted to give you some ideas, things that could maybe make you think about maybe this is a connection, maybe this is, but they're never going to reveal the whole answer, just like George never would. It's supposed to be an object of mystery that will remain an object of mystery.
Assuming there is a quote unquote whole answer, like
right.
How do you train a dog? All right, there might be some general guidelines, but every dog is exactly the same. I don't think so, right? Like and it depends on how old it is, what breed it is, what the owner's like, all these other factors, and I'm sure it's the same for dragons.
And if gods were dogs and dogs were gods, I mean the word is just reversed, right? The letters, they might behave a little differently, but your point is the same. In general, let me clarify something. When I say behind the scenes, I mean generically all the behind the scenes content they give us. That generally means two things, though. There's the inside the episode that follows immediately after the episode. And then there's the House the Dragons Built, which is a separate program that goes into detail about production and other stuff that's listed separately and is usually about 20-minute episodes.
I would say if you don't watch the BTS because you don't like hearing what the cast and creators say about the characters, like if you don't watch the inside the episode afterwards, you might want to still give House That Dragons Built a shot because it's very much more about the technical side of things and not really as much about like Aemond thought this, which kind of spoils the mystery of you wondering. So maybe give it a shot.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. That 10-minute-ish behind the scenes one is a little bit more an analysis of the episode, whereas the House of Dragon Built is a little bit more of a showcase of filmmaking processes, right? The kind of scenes and cameras and how they lit people on fire, stunt work, all that kind of stuff.
Answers important questions, things you didn't even necessarily know. Like everybody knows the dragon stuff is really expensive to make. But you might not have known that werewood was actually quite a project. And that surprised me. I looked at it, I'm like, that's a tree. They just modified it. Someone was like, no, that's not just a tree. There was a lot more that went into it than that. So like, yeah, that was very
including the fact that the Harrenhal werewood is George R.R. Martin himself. If you didn't watch The House the Dragons Built, you might not have realized that they used his face as the model, which is really sweet.
That's right. You didn't expect George R.R. Martin to be a model, but he is one. A tree model. Well, just a face tree model. So, Sean, that was you gave your basic take on the episode as a whole. What about your favorite performances? Let's talk about that.
I once again have a hard time picking out a favorite performance.
It is hard.
I'll tell you, my favorite scene was Daemon and the Riverlords. And based on that, I'm tempted to pick Daemon or maybe even Oscar. I think that kid stood out. He reminded me of Lyanna Mormont in the original Game of Thrones series. It had that energy. I think if I'm pressed to pick, that's what I pick. Nice.
That's a great take. And I love that you said that because I'm currently spacing out on who it was, but I asked somebody else about that. And they also said that they got Lyanna vibes from young Oscar, which is great. I said it. Oh, it was you?
I'm sure someone else has said it to you too, because I've seen a dozen people say it online. We're not alone. It's a young, precocious, leader of their house that is standing up against, someone older and more powerful, presumably. It's a natural comparison to me.
I wonder in a situation like that or like this, how much that is just sort of a coincidence is bound to happen, or if there was any intention. I wonder if that actor was coached. Here, watch Lyanna Mormont, do it like she did. If the writers were feeling that vibe when they put it in the script,
Well, we did our usual weekly poll for best performance in our Facebook group, and currently the winner is the SFX team for the Dragons, but Oscar Archie Barnes, his name, is second. So, yeah, he's doing really well in the poll, and I would not argue with that. He's certainly up there for me as well. But Ashay, what were your favorite performances and your overall take on the episode?
I would say I really loved this episode. I did vote for Archie Barnes. I am somewhat biased. I don't think I've said this on the podcast yet. I don't think I've actually announced it or said anything about it. But at DragonCon this year, I'm going to be wearing Oscar Tully Muppet costume. Listener and friend Chuck has made Kermit Tully, Grover Tully, Elmo Tully, and Oscar Tully. So I was really excited to see him be so popular, I suppose.
Keep an eye on our social media around early September to see photos of that.
Yeah. And so, yes, I liked his performance. I liked the layers of how they were kind of playing up the grievance that he had with Daemon. I thought you could really tell that layer, which was good acting. But I also really, really liked Hugh and Ulf. I think that they did a good job throughout the season of building up to characters. I was really invested by the time they were on Dragonstone. And like when I saw them in the crowd, I was like, there he is. There he is. There's the ones we know. I don't know. I just loved it. I'm really excited to see more of our dragon seeds.
Heck yeah. I have a similar take. I really, really liked Archie Barnes as well. My favorite was probably Ulf. I had a hard time like you, Sean. It's really difficult to pick a single best performance. I've only been able to like clearly do that once or twice. I'm like, okay, this time I know. This isn't one of those times, although I think I would pick Ulf. Just so many good performances. A lot of characters that only had a couple of lines or one line. But still, some of those really stood out. So yeah, just another win for the show overall. The music and sound design, though, I think I would say it's been the best episode this season in terms of that. All the roaring, the flames, the different use of familiar music that we've had in the past with different takes on it, like modified versions of that, I thought was really amazing. And I loved the sound of the distant ravens when Daemon was executing Willem, which might have been hard to catch. It was like a disassociative moment. So that was really good. So just elements beyond acting and story, I thought were among the best as well.
I do want to say that I feel like whenever Emma Darcy is featured, they're my favorite.
Yeah.
They just haven't been as featured as much these past couple, so I'm having a harder time deciding. But whenever Rhaenyra has more of a focal point to the episode, this season at least, that's been my favorite each time. I also want to say that Ulf was... I don't know. I was dismissive of him, frustrated with him early on, but I like him a little bit more this episode because I feel like he kind of had to face himself, his lies, his integrity or whatever. It came into question, and he had a little growth here, and they got a little humor out of it too. But I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we get through here.
I just really appreciate the range of emotions he expresses. Like his face just says so much. I just love that.
We'll talk about it more later, but I don't know if I would say that I think it's growth for Ulf to fake it till he makes it. Like, is that really growth? Is that learning your lesson about being a liar? Not really. That's saying, keep BSing everyone. But I still love Ulf and am enjoying him, so Yeah,
we'll see. Okay, we'll talk about him more later. So Jenny P sends a super chat. No question. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. We'll start where the episode starts, with Dragonstone on the beach. Not a vacation, but it goes pretty well for Rhaenyra. Clinton Liberty pointed out, that's Adam, pointed out that the scene was shot the day after he did his sea smoke bonding scenes, and it's the same beach, but the weather changed a lot, which worked out really well for them. Like, it was a nice sunny day when he claimed sea smoke, and this day it's stormy, and that really fit the vibe of the scene, because Rhaenyra's wary at first. She has no idea what the hell's going on. Like, who the heck is this guy? Why does he have my ex-husband's dragon? And she's really used to people using her power as leverage for their own power. She's been betrayed a lot, people talking down to her. She hasn't had a lot of people that just kind of fall in line and obey. And so she's wary of that when it happens. Like, wait, you're just kneeling to me? Really? So she doesn't really believe it at first, but he's so convincing and earnest, and so she starts to accept it. And he has a line that just spells out a lot of what the episode has, which is, he says, if the gods have called me to greater things, then who am I to deny them? That becomes like a touchstone of this episode, letting the gods decide whether the gods are dragons or just fate or destiny. And a lot of the actions taken by a lot of these characters should be seen through that light, whether they're a dragon seed thinking, I've got a chance, maybe I'm chosen by the gods, or whether it's Rhaena out there thinking, why the heck else is a dragon here? I'm the only Targaryen here. Like, doesn't this seem like the gods have sort of intervened? It can be interpreted that way in a world that has more belief in the gods above and deities and the supernatural.
Yeah, I don't believe in that sort of thing, and I can't help but see how you would make that jump, right? Like, it seems so wild for there to be a dragon with Rhaena in the Vale when she needs a dragon. The dragon just chose. Like, Rhaenyra had never heard of such a thing. Like, maybe, yeah. So it just seems like Misaria says, something has changed.
Rhaenyra, I can see being a little quicker to jump to the, destiny conclusion, because she knows there's this Fire and Ice prophecy, right?
Good point.
But it reminds me that she should have freaking told that to Baela.
It's Rhaena.
Rhaena.
Rhaena. Sorry, I get them mixed up.
It's so funny because we were making jokes after the episode about like when all the kids looked around for Rhaena, you know, that they were like, "Where's Bela?"
But anyway, it seems like Rhaenyra should have given her the prophecy too before she sent her off with these eggs and their legacy.
Oh, because she has I can
You're
see
right.
that. That's a pretty good point.
That's a good argument. I think Rhaena, she has the egg, she has the children, she should have the prophecy. I think that's
she has all that.
Point.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good call, Sean. So I like how the dragon's attitude is present here. Like when Rhaenyra is upset and wary of who this guy with the dragon is before he introduces himself and all that, Syrax is yelling and screaming and making a lot of noise and is angry, and Sea Smoke is probably picking up on that too and is reacting because Addam's a little calmer, I think. Maybe, I mean, he's probably a little scared too, but he's calmer than Rhaenyra. He's not like aggressive feeling towards her. He's not like about to get her.
Well, they each roar at each other.
Yeah, but this is just how I interpret it. I could be wrong, but this is just how I see it. And so when Rhaenyra calms down because she realizes this guy's not a threat, Syrax calms down, and so does Sea Smoke. All the dragons calm down when the humans calm down. I'm sure Addam had a lot of emotions going on too, and Sea Smoke probably picking up on that, but I don't think he was mad or aggressive, which I think maybe Rhaenyra did have some of that in her. At least the stirrings of that because she was wary. Isn't it interesting, Sean, that he doesn't say who his father is, and neither does Corlys tell her? That she's in the dark about who he really is. It's not interesting.
It is very interesting, and I can see why he might not want to do it. Maybe he doesn't want to embarrass Corlys, or he wants to have done this on his own and not be in his father's shadow. I could see the different motivations he might have that make a lot of sense. Corlys maybe also doesn't want to be embarrassed or embarrass Rhaenys legacy. I can see the reasons he might. But I don't know if they realize how valuable it would be for Rhaenyra to know she's trying to track down, how do we get a dragon rider? Who has this blood? Why did this happen? It would be such a revelation for her. It might have saved some lives if they had known. They might have approached it a little bit differently. One other little note I want to make here is I really loved that they really had to raise their voice to communicate, that they were standing at quite a distance.
Because it was stormy outside, the actual wind.
That's a level of, it's minor, it's a nuance, but it's a level of realism. Sometimes it isn't there that I roll my eyes at. Sometimes it takes me out a little bit, but I was rather further engaged. I further believed this scene with two dragons. You know what I mean?
Harder to make that look real, right? But it does look so real because, man, they move so like realistically, the way they just pad along the beach and Syrax's tail like flopping in the sand. Yeah, it was really good. And one thing I don't fully agree with you on is maybe they could have done it differently. I think this example is what got her to do it the way she did. Seeing that the dragon is capable of choosing is why she did it that way. So I don't know that learning who he was would have actually changed anything, because those other folk are just as similarly related. Just because they don't have a connection to Corlys doesn't really matter.
It's hard to say, but it might have led her to keep digging down the noble path.
Well, Misaria is the one who's told her not to do that because, hey, look, I know where all these bastards are.
There is a more direct connection, but that causes trouble with Jace. And,
right? It would have sent her in the wrong direction because, as Corlys says, we're not actually, like, he was confused. So she would have been she would have been distracted by the misdirect of, like, Corlys being related to the reason and not focused on the fact that it's very possibly their mother.
Also, there's more to it than this, which is that the annals, the books, will not reveal people who are only one generation removed. These are direct bastards of Targaryens. You're not going to find that in the annals. You're not going to find that going back. Yeah, which will be less. And that was what she was down on that, because it's like, well, Steffon Darkland was so distantly related. If we find someone that's just a grandfather, grandmother, that might not be good enough either. But we have direct descendants, and that's what Misaria was giving her. So I think they still would have gone with that probably, because those are the closest descendants they can find. And they know where they are immediately, whereas this research might not have dug up much at all. Anyway, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. Let's bring it back to this scene. So she says, it's something I feared impossible, and I'm pleased by it. So it gets her a dragon rider, and it reveals to her how she might get more. As flawed as the idea is, it's certainly workable. It certainly has success, despite all the casualties. So the council is relieved that Rhaenyra is okay. They were a little worried about that, but they're upset, understandably. Again, she's run off without telling anyone. And this time they know she's going to confront a dragon rider. It's not that she just disappeared and like, well, where did she go? She specifically went to confront another dragon, which is like, wait, what? That sounds very dangerous. So then she upsets them even more by just not meeting with them afterwards and not treating Addam like a thief. Like they expect this person to be given justice rather than dinner and, a seat at the table. So this is when we get into the prejudice against the Lowborn. It comes up pretty big here, and it's something that permeates the entire episode. You have, and probably will continue going forward. I mean, you can imagine there's some nobles out there that are going to look real askew at a bastard on a dragon. They are not, I mean, they already do with Jace, and which is part of his issues that we'll discuss shortly. And trust is not a permanent state, right? You may trust somebody now. It doesn't mean you'll trust them later. Like, what are they going to do?
I really think this was such a misstep for Rhaenyra to just go right to meeting with Misaria and not go to her council. Like, they're all here waiting for her. I really, really didn't like that she did this. I found it to be short-sighted. Like, go to the meeting of, like, can you imagine a work meeting where the person who's supposed to lead the meeting just doesn't show up? I don't know. It bothered me, and you can see why Jace is extra bothered. He's like, "Where is the queen? She's not coming." And even like when he hears about what they're doing, the way that Baela looks over at Jace, you can tell they've had private conversations where she knows that this is going to make Jace like extra mad, and he's not wrong. I just don't think he's wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I do agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I completely agree with you. I've been frustrated multiple times in the past when she's like not let the council know what's going on, but I can see how she might justify this time more so than the others because she has a hand now. Corlys is there. That is his role to lead in her stead. So I still don't think it makes it okay, but I can see how she might be justifying it.
And he says the right thing. He says, we'll reserve judgment until we actually talk to this person and meet them and see what the queen says. But yeah, it's frustrating that she's not there. It's frustrating that she doesn't explain herself. I do kind of understand as well why she doesn't go. Not again, I wouldn't necessarily agree with this logic, but she knows it's going to be really hard to convince them that this is the right way. So I think she's maybe trying to prove something before convincing or letting the proof do the convincing. But again, there's a lot of flaws with that idea. So she starts digging into the annals right away. She's like, goes right for it. She's like, I'm going to start looking for more candidates. Misaria comes in and says, do you trust this guy? And she's like, what choice do I have? He's a dragon rider now, which is basically saying, I can either trust him or I can have him killed. Like, what else is there? I'm not going to let him go. Then he might join the other side or something like that, which she would be less worried about if she knew he was Corlys' son, but she doesn't know that, so he's just some guy. And so, yeah, she doesn't really have a choice. He either has to make use of him or have him killed, which is kind of crazy considering he's controlling a dragon that they really need. So Misaria giggles at her. She's like, look, you want to look for Targaryens? I got that covered. She knows where to find a whole lot of them. This is a woman that not only has worked in brothels, she's owned one. She's been keeping tabs on Targaryen bastards for years, kind of like maybe how Varys was keeping tabs on different Robert's bastards. And it's a sensible thing to do when you're a person in power. These are potential claimants to the throne if something crazy happens. And in this case, it's coming up for a different use. It's not just claimants to the throne. This is for dragon claiming. And her past work is really paying off big here. Shout out to Lady Gwyn, by the way, who we had on this Saturday for our preview episode. She predicted the use of Mushroom's line here, under the sheets, under the wood piles. And yes, that is a line from Mushroom in Fire and Blood. So a good taste by Misaria there. Misaria, I think I joked that Misaria is High Valyrian for mushroom. Yeah. And so, yeah, she knows all these people are. And she also says, this is an easy line to miss. She says, there's got to be some bastards here on Dragonstone too. In the book, they pretty much all come from Dragonstone. Same difference. I mean, I think that was a little bit of an oversight on the book's part to not have any from King's Landing. Because yes, there's been Targaryens living there for over 100 years. And of course, some of them go to the brothels. Like, duh. Yeah, of course they do. And that's been said in the show, right? Daemon and Viserys talked about it. Viserys joked about all the time, the Street of Silk when we were 16, and there you go.
We saw Aemond and Aegon going.
Yeah, we saw Aemond go. You're right. He has Sylvie as his...
Eric's day, he goes all the time.
We've even saw one of Aegon's bastards in season 1 in those fighting pits. So, yeah. So Rhaenyra's got a little bit of, royal prejudice. that's very common among the nobility and is going to be probably worse amongst royalty rather than just regular regular nobility. They have such a distance between themselves and the Lowborn in their day-to-day life or their entire lives and they've been taught to not trust them, that they aren't trustworthy because they don't have honor, because they don't belong to a house that teaches them things. She's right to be wary, but that's not the right reason to be wary. It's just, you should be wary of giving any unvetted person a lot of power, regardless of what family they come from. Power can go to anyone's head. So, yeah, unfortunately, the let the dragons choose their riders method doesn't include any personality vetting. It's just the dragons just choose who they like. So, how is that any better, right? Like,
I think you could do like a couple of levels of phasing people out. Like, I think it would have been smarter to do like some interviews. Just get like a personality sense and just make sure someone isn't just like despicable. I think you probably could have ruled out a dozen people easily, right?
Quite possibly, yeah. You would hope that Misaria took that into account. If she knows these people, maybe she'd just like, well, don't bring that guy.
Yeah, don't bring him. He's a rapist. Just don't bring him.
Don't bring that one. Yeah, no, there's a couple she just left off her list. So maybe that was accounted for, but it wasn't in the book either, so they're just going with what was there in that case. But I could see why that's a sensible suggestion that no one thought of. Like, maybe we should vet these people a little more. So, moving on from there, we'll obviously have plenty to say about this topic in general, but moving on to Corlys and Addam. Quite the surprise how he turns around, he's like, oh, like, hi, Dad, But he keeps it professional, like you said, Sean. It's not his place to be the one to break that, to break the spell of silence on what's really going on here. So he's so duty bound. He's like, I request leave from my duties. It's almost absurd. Like, you're a dragon rider now. There's no way he's gonna make you stay as a shipwright. That's just insane, right? But and Corlys.
Imagine if he did. He shows up to work on his dragon. He's hammering some wood. He has a lunch.
That's like a
chips to the dragon.
Can you imagine a guy at the construction site and is like, everybody pulls up in their work cars in the morning, and one guy just pulls up in a stretch Hummer. It's like, you work at the construction site, as a day laborer. That's strange. That's a little. Your car is a little out of place there, man. So Corlys kind of struggles to find the right words to say. You can see him like start to form a sentence or two, and then he just says, "Well done." And it actually meant a lot to Addam, and I'm not projecting. This is what Clinton Liberty said in the behind the scenes. It's just 2 words, and Corlys owes him so much more than that. He hasn't parented him at all. Yet it's just this is a man that's like in the desert that hasn't had a drink of water, and this is a drink of water. This is that drink of water he's wanted his whole life. His father to acknowledge him, even though it's just those 2 words, that they mean a lot. From the sidelines, we could say, "Man, you owe him so much more," but to Addam in that moment, it was a very big deal.
And it could be the start of what he owes him.
Sure.
It's the ice has been broken,
Yeah, that's a good point. So Corlys then goes to Alan after getting the mission set up by Misaria and Rhaenyra into how to collect the dragon seeds. He goes to Alan. Alan's a pretty stoic fellow, doesn't show a lot of emotions on his face, but this news, he can't help but look a little astonished. Like, what? There is it's hard to imagine a thing that he could say that would be true, but more far-fetched than that. Like, how? Like, my brother did what now? Like, how is this?
Your brother's the king now.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
That would be a little crazier. Yeah. So that's just really great. And then. So Corlys is basically like, look, I don't know who, I didn't look that much into your mother's history, but if he claimed a dragon and Rhaenyra's putting out a call for more, what do you say? And he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go try for a dragon. I'm salt and sea. Nice phrasing there, right, Sean? I'm salt and sea.
Yeah, I think this is a follow-up for sure to when he offered his granddaughter, the seat of a granddaughter, yeah, of Driftmark, and she's like, I'm fire and blood, you need salt and sea. And here's Alan saying, I'm salt and sea. And this is also in the wake of the plot line with Daemon and his vision of Viserys saying, the person who seeks the power is probably not the right person for it. Alan is like, I just want to be a sailor. I'm not lusting for something greater. I hope Corlys takes that as you'll be a good reader. A good leader. You're not ambitious, right? You're not going to...
Mm-hmm. Or he has the right kind of ambitions.
You'll accept it as a duty,
Yeah. Yeah, his ambition might be to be a good leader, for example, that's a good ambition. Yeah. So he goes and delivers the message to Alinda, which presumably contained instructions and names, though he didn't deliver it directly to Alinda. He gave it to some agent who took it to another agent who took it to several go-betweens here. There's a lot of agents in King's Landing. Misaria's got a web, right? Like, and Alinda's just near the center of that web, but not quite at the actual center like Misaria is. Stannis Baratheon says, the way Rhaenyra sets aside Jace is a huge mistake. He's the crown prince and is being dismissed by Rhaenyra in the same way she dismisses her council. Yeah,
strong words from Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah,
himself.
Stannis would know a thing or two about how to treat your council and being a second-born son and all that. So yeah, no, I agree. I think that the tension between Rhaenyra and Jace is real. He's not. We'll get to it in a little more detail, but his concerns are fairly legitimate, and I don't think she really addressed them all that well. Well, yeah, let's come back to that, though. For my people says, Rhaenyra giving her best to Lord Farquaad. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Very much true. So here we go. Jace and Rhaenyra. This is the next section. He's livid, like so many people, or like people, like a lot of counselors and stuff. Just the idea of Lowborn having dragons is just, he hates it. And this is where we see this behavior that makes us not like them as much. When he says they're mongrels, it's like, oh, Jace, don't. The audience didn't like that. None of us wanted to hear him say that. He's definitely projecting a little bit, but he's got a point, despite the prejudice there. And to be fair, he was taught this prejudice. This was given to him. It wasn't something he was just born. He wasn't just like, I decided that common people are terrible. But it is still, that doesn't make him not responsible for it. Still, he's concerned about his place in the succession, which is a problem unique to him. Like, people always have, there's always succession issues here and there. Rhaenyra doesn't fully understand it, though. It seems like she doesn't grasp exactly what he's saying. He's still the heir. She's like, what do you mean? You're still the heir. What does that matter? Like, well, first of all, you saw how much shit people gave you when you were the named heir because they challenged who you really were, or whether you were deserving of it. In my case, it's not just about me, whether I deserve it. It's whether I am who I say I am. And everybody knows who I am, really. Like, it's an open secret. Come on, Mom. I know who I am. I know I'm Harwin Strong's son. You really think this is a secret? You really think people are going along with it? No. If I can easily be kicked out. I can lose my claim because of the truth of who I am. The thing that proved I am who I am, despite my dark hair, is the fact that I claimed a dragon. That's what proved it. Now, if other people have dragons and they also have like blonde hair and all these other things, well, what's going to stop? If they have a bigger dragon than him, what's going to stop them from saying, hey, I come before you? What if one of them really is Viserys' son that is actually could be considered higher in the line of succession? Things like that. So it's a real concern.
I loved this scene. I really liked the arc they've given Jace here. I think it is very believable. Like, it makes sense that he would be very disturbed by this and shake him to his core. I think as much as it hurts to hear him calling people mongrels, I'm sure he heard someone say that about him, thought it about himself. He's projecting these feelings. Anything negative he says about any of these dragon seeds, you got to realize he's thinking it about himself. And it's really painful to me to think about just the way that he's self-hating, I guess. And I think Harry Collette did a really good job at showing this like pain that he has deep down, that he's
it's a betrayal from his mother.
Yeah, but like, I'm glad he's expressing it to Rhaenyra. He's being emotional with her. He's not purely bottling it up, but he's also not blowing up at her in the front of everyone else. I think Jace is doing pretty good at dealing with a hard situation.
Hopefully, he's doing good till he isn't thing like Aemond,
I kind of think so.
Yeah,
I think
not.
he's going to snap. I think it's going to be too much. I think these dragon seeds are going to do something. I think he's going to be very sensitive to any little snark from any of the dragon seeds,
A couple comments here. I felt in that moment when he said they're mongrels, the look she gave him was, you're a mongrel. Like, how can you say that? You're a mongrel. And, but the thing I do agree, another thing I think she's not getting is that, like you were saying, she was the heir because Viserys said so. but it was still kind of questioned. But it was still, at least ostensibly, upheld until Viserys died. After that, he wasn't there to enforce it anymore, and that's what Jace is worried about. Right now, she's saying, you're my heir. But when she dies, now who's saying it? Now he can't necessarily stand up for himself, especially if there's other people with dragons claiming that they are the heir or could or should be.
Bigger dragons.
This cycle could happen again.
Bigger dragons.
Yeah, true, yeah.
But yeah, and it's not like a lot of other people are just like Jace's defenders. He doesn't have like some retinue of friends. He doesn't have a drinking's guard that's like there to back him up. Like, yo, when the time comes, we got your back.
He has Baela.
Yeah, he's got Baela, which is that's something. That's a big deal, but that's still just one person.
Now, I do think, by the way, that there is at least a potential answer here that might be hard for them to address in this time of war, and they're kind of removed from the continent and all this other stuff. But I think Jace and Rhaenyra need to do the same thing that Viserys and Rhaenyra should have done, is prop him up as the heir. Visit all the lords in the land with your dragons and remind them, like, become a good leader. Meet with the other leaders. Have a good tax policy.
Well, to be fair, they did do that.
Ivory Tower, people might not accept it.
To be fair, they have done that, though. Like, he did go all these diplomatic missions by himself, which is so that is the you're right. Like, that's a good way to do it.
Chances,
and it was his idea to do that, and he wanted to, and that was part of his thinking at the time. He's like, look, this will prove, we have dragons. This will prove that we're who we are, and we can show them. And yeah, it
was also his idea to do this with the dragon seeds.
Yeah, maybe not he liked the idea of nobles, but yeah, he doesn't like these lowborn. Yeah, you're right. That was the tipping point for him.
One last thing I got to tell you, someone made a post about how Jace, they put Jace and Ben Stiller from Zoolander next to each other doing Blue Steel. I can't get that out of my head.
It's been in our breakdown video, Sean.
I have
had it in there, yes. Jace is always serving face in Blue Steel, yes.
I think now, at least sometimes, it's Blue Seethe.
Blue Seethe. Ooh, I like that. He's Jace the face, right? Yeah. So yeah, Rhaenyra ends this conversation basically saying, like, we don't really have a choice here. And Jace sort of made the same point himself. He's like, hey, it's better than defeat and death. But to him, losing his spot in the succession is defeat. And perhaps death, because of, if you're a rival claimant, you usually end up dead if you don't win. It's the Game of Thrones, right? You win or you die. That's the scenario he's imagining. So she's developing, maybe this is the beginning of maybe a little bit of a god complex here for her. She's getting a little above the decisions and not listening maybe a little bit less. And that's familiar to us regarding, someone like Daenerys, who also had a lot of bad counselors around her and didn't give great advice. There were some that were very good too, but even the ones who were had some flaws and some shortcomings, just maybe like Barristan, there are certain things he just didn't know about. Barristan's not a cunning man, and she's shown the best temperament. A lot of us would look at Rhaenyra and be like, she's probably the best leader, in terms of the one that we would want to see sit the throne in terms of taking care of the realm properly. But that doesn't mean she's anywhere near perfect, and that doesn't mean she can't become corrupted by her own view of herself and her own power. So let's continue to the bringing of the dragon seeds. Alan goes with that message, and the go-betweens are utilized. Alinda receives the message. Word spreads. Posters are put up. You even see Alinda. I love it. It's like a montage. Alinda is seen speaking to a lot of different people. And one thing that's important to notice, that throughout all the Alinda scenes in this episode and prior scenes, she has free run of the city when it comes to the gold cloaks. That's supposed to be very, we're supposed to notice that and be like, okay, well, the gold cloaks are clearly on their side, which makes sense, right? Daemon was their commander, and we already saw Blood just refers like, oh, commander,
And she's not exactly being that sneaky. She's literally in the Massey sigil on her dress and like a bright red dress. She's the opposite of sneaky.
Yeah. I guess she does. She knows she doesn't have to be sneaky because
don't be suspicious.
Yeah, all the cops are on her side. She doesn't have to hide. Yeah, it's funny. But you wonder, like, how much is Larys really aware of this? I mean, some of this happened so quickly. Like, I can buy Larys not knowing about the call for dragon seeds, because it happens really fast. Like, they deliver the message, she starts gathering them up, and it's like a day or two that they leave. So, like, I don't know if Larys could have reacted to anything that quickly. But the very idea that these bastards existed in the first place, and maybe some of the other stuff, like, is he keeping this from Aemond, like the Sea Smoke news? something to think about before we get to that section. Let's not talk about that now. I just wanted to set it up by laying this out now. That's a big deal. The town is on alert. A lot of the people are hearing about this gathering of dragon seeds. And Ulf is afraid. He's like, well, I would go, but, my leg. It's so funny. I love that. He's like, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but, I'm not feeling right. I'm just got out of the bed on the wrong side today, So he's sort of backing off his whole, life story a little bit, isn't he? But his friends are like, nah, this is... You got to get back at Aemond, and this is like you can't let everybody know that you've been lying all this time, and he's like, and I love how his face just goes through so many emotions. He's like, should I? Oh no, I can't. Well, maybe. Well, what if I? Yeah, you could just feel all the different the ticker going across his brain. You can understand why he at first doesn't even believe it to be real, and why he's not eager to try to ride a dragon. It seems like a very dangerous thing to do. But of course, he's reminded if they could stick it to Aemond, which is important to them after the rumors that had been spread through the city before. And his friends just pump him up. They're like, Ulf the Dragon Lord, Ulf. They shout him up, and he's pumped up by their support. And how could he say no at this point?
Can I just tell you how excited I am to see Ulf stroll back through his bar, an actual Dragon Lord. We're going to see Samson KO there. Olawande from Our Flag Means Death is going to hopefully be part of his drinking guard. He's going to have a little crew of friends. I don't know.
That's right. They might be his retinue going forward. Yeah. His entourage, like you said. I think his name is Maja, and the other guy's name is Clay, by the way.
Oh, very cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Majja, I think it is. And Hugh and Kat, on the other hand, their discussion is much more somber. We learn that their child has passed, and he admits that he's been lying to her about his heritage because he's been ashamed of it. He says he's the son of Balon's sister. This should be Sarah Targaryen, the 9th child of Alicent and Jacaerys. It's a very interesting character, a very unusual Targaryen who you might have gathered that. It's like, wait, this Targaryen with the name Targaryen was working in a brothel? Yeah, that happened. Yeah, that really did happen.
And that also might explain why she had all these bastards. I saw someone in the live stream chat asked about that. If that was your job, wouldn't you take steps to make sure you don't have kids? Well, if you're privileged and you make lots of money, you might be like, I want to have kids.
I want to keep a few of them.
Yeah,
maybe she liked the dad, that particular guy. I want his son would be fine to have. Or,
yeah, like he said, she was afforded more, rights than most because of who she was, right?
And what she wanted as a Targaryen princess, this is a person who is defined as someone who always got what they wanted, and what they wanted changed constantly. So this is just a real chaotic person full of desires and no shame about getting what they want, and just a very selfish individual.
Hugh is real conflicted about it. You have to wonder how old he was when he struck out from his mother's, how long he lived with her before he was like, I can't be around my mom, my hot mom.
Yeah. And his anger over these failures and the anger that his own place in life caused him when he was young, the shame that he felt, is what caused him to work so hard. And now he's at the place in life where all that hard work he's got nothing to show for. He's got his wife, and that's good, but they lost their child, and they're disagreeing on their future. And actually, as it works out, the anger is part of what makes him a good match for Vermithor, aka the Bronze Fury. And that might be something that they have a little mind melding over, something they have in common, something the dragon recognizes in him. But Kat's still against it. She's, even with that reveal, he's still still sounds really, really dangerous, and I don't want to be a widow. I want to be a lady less than I want to be a widow, more than, you know what I mean? So I got to do it. He's compelled from his mind. He doesn't have a choice. He thinks he has to go do it, and he does. So I also wonder about her, as much as we wonder about Ulf's friends and how they're going to react. It's going to be great. It'll be hilarious. What's Kat's reaction going to be? Is she just going to be troubled, or actually okay, you did it, well, now that's good? I don't know. Do you any thoughts on this, Sean? It's hard to know. We don't know this character super well, but it's very different than the Ulf. right, this is night and day, the vibes here, pre and post.
Yeah, I can see her still being mad. a lot of times people are results oriented, and she might be like, well, what's done is done. Let's make the best of it. But sometimes people are like, hey, it happened to work out, but it wasn't what I wanted. I'm mad that you took this chance. I don't want you to do it again. And it's not over. Why are you on this dragon? To go fight other people on dragons? Like, it's not over, I still don't want to be a widow. So
good point. Yeah. And it might change him, who he is. Like, how would that not change you as a person? So, like, is this still the person that she fell in love with? And is he still going to be interested in her?
Rhaenyra even said that.
Yeah.
It changes you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Very good point. You're right. She did say that. So again, I wonder about Larys and learning about stuff like this. Did he know? Like, it's one thing for him to know that the Dragon Seeds thing was happening, because that was really fast. Like I said, I got to understand him missing that. But all the stuff about Aemond going against Aemond and the stories being passed amongst the commoners, like, that's the kind of stuff I think he might know about. And I wonder if he's just keeping it from him. Is that being hidden? Did you get that vibe, Sean or Shed? Is that how you saw it?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think Larys is just incompetent. I think there's two things going on here, right? One is Larys does not support Aemond truly. He is backing Aegon, and it's better for himself, right? That's one. Two, Aemond has proven to his council that you have to be careful sharing information with him or you get in trouble, right? And so Aemond both isn't receiving information because not everyone supports him, but also because he hasn't given a very conducive environment to people sharing with him. So that's why Ironrod isn't sharing this with him.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at leadership. If you are bad to your own subordinates, and that causes them to treat you a certain way that doesn't give you the information you need to lead, then you're in big trouble.
A little tangent here, but that is a trope that I just can't stand. It happens in movies and TV shows all the time, that you have some sort of mob boss or whatever, and he treats his subordinates like imbeciles. Now, maybe they are imbeciles, but why does this mob boss has imbeciles as his close counsel? Or, maybe they're not imbeciles, but he treats them that way. Well, how did someone who treats their counselors, their close confidants, like imbeciles get to this position? It just doesn't make sense. You just can't be a successful leader. You can't get to this level of this menacing villain with this type of behavior. It doesn't make sense.
He doesn't know that.
Yeah, right. Well, but the way you might get there is if you're someone's son and you suddenly get put in this position, which is what's happening here. And we're seeing the repercussions of treating your subordinates, people who are supposed to be helping you, poorly. They get scared to help you. All that said, I still think it's possible that Larys doesn't know. I don't think that he's necessarily incompetent or withholding it. He might be overwhelmed. He might be spending all his time on agents outside the city. He's trying to find information about the movement of troops or dragons and stuff that's going on. And he may even have heard whispers of it, but it might be, now again, maybe a problem because Aemond is so, it's scary to bring stuff to him. But remember when he asked Ironrod, is like, how did you know about this, by the way? Oh, my squire's brother's dad's friend said so. Like, you're stretching. Larys might have heard some whispers of Rhaenyra is looking for dragon riders in the city, but it might be too new and too awkward for him to trust it enough to report to Aemond. So I can see how he may or may not be holding it back. We'll get to it in a minute, but I think what he is holding back is Aegon's progress. I think he doesn't want Aemond to know how far Aegon is along.
That's possible, and that would be why they had the door locked or whatever, why he's like, give me a minute, because they didn't want people to see. However, I tend to side with the Shea on this. I think I seriously doubt Larys isn't aware of what's going on in the city. He's the one that told Aemond about the food shortages and how that had to be handled. So it's kind of hard for him to be aware of that and not some of these other things. And it's not like the same agents he has are the ones in the city are the ones that he would send elsewhere to do other things. These are people that are already in positions that can't really move around that much. It's like I have bribed this shipmaster. I can't send this guy over to scout the Reach. It's the spies are invested in where they're invested generally.
Counterpoint: these are agents of Misaria who might not tell Larys or his.
Well, I'm not saying they have the same agents. I mean, some of them might be working for both, but I'm assuming they each have their own set of agents. But some of them are probably double. That's a good point. So Ironrod and Larys, let's talk about this conversation they have. Aemond is dispensing justice of his own at the time. It's a bit like Daemon at Harrenhal, but the roles are reversed. Daemon doesn't actually want to execute Will and Blackwood, but as we'll discuss, he kind of has to. in this case, Aemond never liked Aegon's drinking guard, and they weren't qualified to be Kingsguard in the first place. But I kind of feel like he ginned these charges up a little bit. I don't recall the other two, these two that got sent to the wall. I don't recall them drawing their swords. I think it was just the one guy that did that. And he's the one who got stomped to death and killed by the mob. So I think he's to blame. And these other two just are guilt by association. And Aemond is like, well, this is an easy chance to get rid of them. And so he's pinning the riot on them a bit, like they're the scapegoats.
I mean, he's kind of right though. They already were talking about how they're going to break their vows and stuff. Like they weren't.
Oh, agree. They're bad at their job. They didn't deserve to be there. But the riot was not their fault. That's my point.
Well, my point is, I think he did a great thing here, and that these were not two people that should be in the Kingsguard. He didn't just kill them, which he could have, and instead he sent them to the wall. And now the wall has two more able-bodied men. So, like, I kind of...
it was a good choice, yeah.
Yeah, I respect Aemond for this call. Like, he could have killed them. He didn't. I'm glad. I think
executing them would have been a bit much, and I agree. The sending them to the wall is better. But, yeah, I'm just saying that they aren't to blame for the riot. I think those were ginned up charges. But, yeah, they didn't deserve to be Kingsguard in the first place. There's no doubt. They sucked at it. They're terrible. And, yeah, not just because they were going to break their vows. They're just not competent in other ways. So yeah, Larys calls it merciful that they're going to be sent to the wall. And like, yeah, because they deserve death according to that take. So, but Ironrod then pauses. He kind of looks at Larys for a minute, and he's like trying to decide how he's going to say it. Kind of stares for a minute, and like, I bring to you a matter of great importance. You know, it's like this look right here. I love it. Thanks for having that, Ashaya. Perfect, right at the ready. So. It is kind of difficult to parse exactly what's happening here because there's a lot of subtext. Like, is Ironrod like setting Larys up for some news that he's not sure, but he's like, I don't know if this is true, so you should tell him. They're both kind of afraid of Aemond, so neither of them really want to approach him in general, especially Larys. Larys probably more so than Ironrod, but neither of them could know this. Like, even if Larys's whisperers, even his network is extremely good, he probably is being truthful when he's talking to Ironrod. Like, who else could this writer be? Like, Rhaena tried to claim a dragon sea smoke when she was 14, and that didn't work.
I saw the funniest meme about this. It was like, man, if I was Rhaena and the whole realm knew I had failed that hard, I would be so embarrassed I'd leave for Pentos right then and there. I was like, it's so true that like everyone's just gossiping like, she just failed.
Why can't she claim a dragon? All these other Targaryens, like first try, like she just can't do it.
She's synonymous with failure.
So they are perplexed at the whole idea. So it's not just an intelligence. You wonder, like, the intelligence could be right or wrong, but it's hard to figure out why it would be accurate because they're both aware of this small pool of dragon riders that they can't conceive of how this pool has gotten larger suddenly as it has. So yeah, it is a little tricky to interpret the scene because you can't tell. It's hard to tell if they're just like one of them is trying to sell the other one out or if they're genuinely not sure. I think it's all of the above. I think all these things are in play.
Yeah, I think on one hand, Ironrod maybe there's like a lot of win-win here, right? Like if I give Larys this information and Aegon receives it well and it turns out to be true, okay, well now Larys owes me a favor. If I give this Larys information and he gets it Aegon and it doesn't go, oh, hey, that's on Larys, not me.
Exactly. Yes, you're so right.
And he gets to feel Larys out either way also. You know, Larys can, even if Larys is clever enough to figure out what Ironrod's doing, Ironrod still, yeah, that's, sure, you figured me out. It's still up to you if you want to give him the information or not. Like, he's still, even if Larys is suspicious of him, he still has a hard time losing here. And another factor too, because he probably knew the thing that Larys said that it, maybe keep this to yourself. That's kind of weak evidence. You heard from someone, especially when you consider that it could just be like the telephone game. Someone just misunderstood or saw the wrong thing. Every random fisherman knows exactly what every dragon looks like. Like maybe they just saw Balon her dragon, or who knows if the information was even correct. Even if it was honestly told.
And here you have Silverwing showing up at the end, which is like, is that the dragon they saw? Like maybe they thought it was sea smoke, but it was Silverwing instead. Yeah. It's harder it's a little easier to make that mistake, especially from a distance. Like when Vhagar at the end is flying towards Aemond, like, does Aemond know which dragon that is? It's clearly a dragon, but can he make the color out?
You said Vhagar flying towards Aemond?
Sorry, Vhagar playing towards King's Landing. Like, can he tell what dragon that is? Probably not. He may have been able to tell before he even got out there, but it wasn't clear at any point if he knew what dragon that was. It was just something he had to do something about. But we'll discuss that scene at the end, because that's at the end.
Yeah, I feel like specifically Sea Smoke and Silverwing could be confused with one another.
Exactly,
They're both a kind of blue-gray silver color, you know?
Yeah.
Like I
Similar
could see that.
size.
Similar size, yeah, exactly.
And that's us. We might confuse them knowing exactly what they look like and what their names are. Every random person in a realm doesn't know that information. So. Now,
Larys, Aegon, and Orwyle. So, like you said, Sean, there may be some, you noticed some evidence or some hints that maybe he's trying to conceal Aegon's progress. And the progress, I'm sure Larys is trying to pump him up a little bit. But he said your progress is impressive, and he's walking. Now, something important to keep in mind here, we're doing these scenes in a different order, but when the scene starts, it's right after we see the dream of Viserys. So the Daemon's dream with Viserys ends, and then it cuts to this scene, which is Aegon walking with a cane. He's completely channeling the father he didn't want to be like.
In his room.
In the same room. Yeah, good point, Shea. Yeah. So why is there the rush? I think that's pretty straightforward, right? He's Aemond. That's the thing that's already been established. But also now there's new dragon riders to be concerned about. Like, like maybe not only is your own side a threat to you, your own brother, but the other side is gaining some steam with their military strength, and there's various reasons why you might need to be mobile now. Two big reasons.
I think this rush is coming from Larys. I think I'm more confident when I watched it over again, when I had this idea. The moment that the door opens and Orwyle sees that it's Larys, he's like, oh,
yeah, he knows it's somebody else.
Across his face. Mm-hmm. He was worried that Aemond or someone else was going to see that he's pushing Aegon to recover faster. He wants Aemond to think that Aegon is laid up in bed and is just going to be there indefinitely. But Larys, I think, wants to suddenly present Aegon, almost like when Viserys walked back into the throne that day, like I'll handle court today, Otto.
I will sit the throne this day.
I'll sit the
throne, right? I think we're going to get a moment like that with Aegon, and I think that's also why it seemed confusing at first, because Larys is telling Orwyle, you should be more careful, but then he says, keep pushing him. Like, well, I'm confused. What he means is, when you're pushing him, be careful about who might come in. He even says, I'll have the sentry give you more warning. I'll give you a bigger head start if someone's coming, get him back into bed to hide what we're doing here.
Yeah, and he says you shouldn't do that alone also. It's just like, well, who's supposed to be helping me here? But yeah, I agree. That's a great point about the idea of presenting him as healthy all of a sudden. But I do think that the reasons for him to be concerned are part of this. Like, that is part of why he has to hurry.
But I think he's hurrying because he's worried he's going to get in trouble with Aemond. He's worried because Aemond
all the things, getting caught, the greens and the blacks, all those things.
And I think that you shouldn't be doing this by yourself. I think that might have been for the guard's sake, that he might have wanted the guard to hear that statement. So
maybe
he doesn't think,
that's possible.
This is happening all the time or whatever. Yeah.
Tom was really good in the scene too. His pain acting just so good, very authentic, and it's his one scene of the episode, but he really took a lot of attention with that. I really caught note of that. It was really heartrending.
Aemond had his own orb at council now. I don't think he took it back from Aegon.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he took it back. Yeah. That would be strange for him to take it back. Let's take a short break here. I hope to see a lot of y'all in New York. The time is growing short. It's next Saturday the 3rd. We're going to be live at City Winery in Chelsea. That's Manhattan. You should come out and wear a costume, because we will give you prizes. And if you have the coolest costume, we'll give you more prizes. But either way, you can hang out with us in a relatively intimate setting. There won't be a whole lot of people there. And we'll get to talk about the season, look forward to episode 8, and just hang out. Like, a lot of y'all have never met us, and we probably haven't met you, with a few exceptions, and we would like to do that. So, Ashaya, please tell them where to find the link.
bit.ly/howlivenyc.
Hell yeah. We hope to see you there this Saturday, August 3rd. City Winery, NYC. Okay, Lee Hughes says, calling it now, Adam's mother is a daughter of Sarah. I like to think Sarah had a lot of kids and Lisa sent them to live near Dragonstone in the hopes of some of her descendants would claim dragons. Well, it's certainly possible. Book version of Sarah did have multiple bastards. They could have tweaked who they were for the show, because, for example, in the book, all 3 of those bastards are sent to the Great Council to make claim. Here, that's not what happened. I don't think any of them showed up to make claims to the Grand Council in the show version. One of those bastards should be Hugh, so he obviously wasn't there. So yeah, that's entirely possible, and I wonder if they will fill some of this out more, if they'll explore it. It would need for Hugh and Ulf to have a conversation about their parentage, or Addam and Ulf, or Addam and Hugh, or the three of them to just dinner with dragon seeds, see what kind of conversations come up, talk about their past. Drinking contest, Ulf would win, that kind of thing. Divine Miss the Z, they referred to mothers at one point in the episode. Was that Sylvie's brothel?
Yes, I think so, for sure.
Yeah. 2 girls from the mothers. There was like a barmaid from the 7 maesters. I just threw out some names there. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, I think Madame Sylvia's mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hint there.
Yeah, I think you're right. So you looked up the orb. It looks the same, huh?
You have it on screen. Doesn't it look like the exact same as what Aegon's orb looked like to you?
Kind of hard to tell. It does look similar. I don't know if it's hard. It would be too difficult for me to say it's the exact same, but
it's the same color.
It definitely looks very similar.
It does look similar. Yeah, that's kind of odd. Bogsy sends a super chat and says, the look he gave Vermithor was inhuman. Oh,
Yo.
I see what you did there. Very good. Very good. Oscar and Daemon. Let's talk about Harrenhal. Let's go there. This was a great scene. Sean, you said it was probably your favorite. We get the relentless dripping to start this whole sequence of scenes here. The dripping from the ceiling. It's enhancing Daemon's irritability, his impatience, and it's kind of like the ticking of a clock. Does that, all those things for us. Daemon, kind of like Corlys, when meeting with Oscar, he congratulates him on something that he really didn't have much role in. He's like, You're the head of your household now. Well done. He's like, well, I didn't do anything. It's the exact same thing that Corlys says. Well done. It's like, yeah. So this kid has a real spine, but also keeps his cool and manages to walk a tightrope here. It's a difficult spot he's in, but he handles it super well. I love that he says, you've made rather a mess of this. He's like, yeah, that is putting it mildly. And I'm green in this matter. That was a great little, it's like, green, you say? What kind of green?
Oscar green?
Yeah, Oscar green or the greens. Like, I'm siding with the greens, yeah. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's true too. But I will say in the book, there's a great line where they're referring to his brother Kermit, who's cut from the show, who they call him green as summer grass, and say his brother Oscar was still greener and had a prickly pride common in second sons. So yeah, it's a nice little Easter egg. Love it.
That is really good. So he ultimately decides, and this is before going outside to say that he's basically telling Daemon, yeah, I'm with you because, our oath is more important than anything else. But justice also matters. And that part he doesn't say to Daemon. He waits till they're outside and kind of drops that part on him. So Oscar says he's not sure that the Riverlords will follow him, though, before they go out because he's so young. He's like, I can't just tell them what to do. In other words, I'm too young. I don't know if they'll obey me yet. Like, my authority has yet to be tested. This will be the first time I tell them what to do at all. And it's a really big thing to be telling them what to do in the midst of this other drama. So it's a reasonable thing for him to say. And it also kind of allows him a little more leeway. It's like, well, Daemon, I can't just go out in there and order them around, So I'm going to have to play both sides a little. Daemon doesn't fully get it. I think he gets it, but I don't think he understands just how far Oscar's going to go with this. Like, he definitely doesn't expect to execute Willem. He didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I think that's correct. He didn't expect to execute him, but I think he knew that he was going to get roasted.
He knew that he was going to get talked down to a little bit. I think some of it was he was playing it up, like you suggested. I'm open to that. Some of it, he maybe still his pride is so overwhelming that he had to rein it back in, even in the moment when he knew he had to be on his best behavior. And he says, yeah, I may have been a little too enthusiastic in pursuing my aims. That's about as much of an apology as you'll get from him. He's a king, and this,
I think Daemon knows he has to let Oscar look like he got the best of him.
Yes, he does.
He has to.
You're right.
Yeah. I even suspect that Oscar might have been counseled by a couple of these other lords before he went there. They're like, look, we're not going to do X, Y, Z unless you and or Daemon do X, Y, Z. You're like, we're going to commit our troops and our safety. Dragons might burn our homes. Like, we got to really believe in this. And I think that Oscar knew that he was going to have to publicly put Daemon in his place to win these people over. And I think Daemon realized it. Daemon realized, I'm just going to have to suck this up, aren't I? for him to be the leader, I can't snap back at him. For me to win these people, I want their army. Like he even said, I don't want their love, I want their swords. So, all right, well, I'll go out there and be the punching bag for a minute, as long as I get the swords in the end. And I do think that was maybe the one up he didn't anticipate, was having to execute Willem there. But I think that was something that the other lords let Oscar knew they needed to have happen.
Yeah, I don't even think Oscar went out there knowing for sure he was going to have to, Willem would have to be executed, but it may have been on his mind.
Yeah, he probably knew it was a possibility. I mean, maybe Willem Blackwood might have just said, I renounce you, Oscar Tully, and then, well, he doesn't dispense justice on him at all, right? Like, he doesn't know how Willem was going to react in that moment, even. He was kind of a wild card.
Yeah, and it played really well. He waited. Once Willem knelt to him, he's like, okay, now I've got him. You know, like, now you've submitted to me. Now that means you've submitted to my authority and my judgment here. I like your idea that he may have been coached. It makes sense that a young man would ask for some advice, especially a guy like this who doesn't seem arrogant. He seems like he would ask for advice. And he also plays it really smooth. He's like, look, I'm too young to just go off in some other direction. So the best thing I can do is just carry forward my grandfather's oath. That was so smooth.
It was perfect. Yes, exactly.
Loved that.
Like, I'm torn here. You guys are torn too. So when you can't figure out what the right answer, it seems like I should default to what my father wanted, the oath that we all made. That's, if we can't figure the rest out, let's go to that baseline, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue against that. But the one argument against that might be the terrible things that Daemon/Willem did. Okay, well, let's address that too then. And they addressed it, so now everyone's all on board.
Yeah, you're right. I like the idea that coaching, also, I wrote in our notes that if maybe it was Alice, of all people, that did the coaching.
Who wasn't present in this episode at all.
She was not. But we get this great overhead shot of the lords and the heart tree, which could be kind of like her view of the event, like the bird's eye view. The owl's eye view. Yeah,
that's what I think. I feel strongly that she was observing.
Yeah. Yeah, how would she miss this? Like, yeah. She has to. This is the culmination of events that she's been partly guiding.
And it's such a striking image because it's from amidst the branches, you know? Like, it's right. From a perch type place.
That's a good point. It really does look like right where a bird would be standing. So, Oscar is introduced. Right, he says his business. He says, I'll defer to my grandfather's oath and to tradition. But this is what Daemon's not expecting. Justice is part of that tradition, like Lady Mallister points out. Willem Blackwood kind of gets the vibe, and he's like, uh-oh. And he says, look, justice was done. The Brackens were traitors. They needed to be punished. He's not entirely wrong about that. The Brackens did go to the other side, and that deserves punishment. But
all the wives and children of the Brackens decided to support the other side, and so he had to go dispense justice. Yeah.
So exactly, Sean. Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. And Oscar points out this wasn't really your motivation. We all know better than that. You did it because you wanted to, because these were Brackens. If it was the Vances and you were tasked with putting the Vances down and getting them in line, you wouldn't have done this. You would have done it a different way. You would have done a more straightforward war manner, like go at their keep with an army and put them under siege or something like that. It wouldn't have been. You would not have treated any other Riverlands house like this. It's because they're the Brackens that you did it this specific way. Yes, Daemon told you to do your worst, but you did even more because you wanted to.
Yeah, if someone had told the Pipers to go do this to the Blackwoods, would Willem have expected this to be done? And this is also a little bit of a message to the lords. Like, just because someone above me tells you to do something, it doesn't mean I'll be okay with it, right? Like, I guess if you think you have to do it because the king told you, go ahead. But that doesn't mean you'll get off scot-free. You'll still have to pay the consequences if it's the wrong thing. And furthermore, this is a little bit of a message to Daemon, like, hey, you can't ask us to do the wrong thing. We just won't do it. This guy did it because he's crappy and we cut his head off. And now everyone else will get their head cut off. You can't ask us to do the wrong thing anymore. We're held together by an oath. You have an oath too, right?
Well said. That's very good. Yeah. Daemon is kind of put on notice. Like, you know, and that they're also basically saying, yeah, we're pledging to the queen here. They refer to Daemon as her representative, you know. It's like, just because her representative is so reprehensible, you know, so my feelings on him shouldn't make me deny my oath and the oath that we all took. Yeah, it's really, really well done. I love the excellent dialogue. It all just was like so smooth and people saying the perfect things to support their position.
Part of why I think he was coached a little, because it was too perfect for a 11-year-old or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can see that.
He's much older than 11.
Is he like 13 maybe, 14?
I would guess this kid is like 15, 16, 17.
Think so? That old?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Well, still pretty young.
And he's a Ser, too. Like
He was?
He was called Ser Oscar.
They called him Sir Oscar?
Yeah, in the show.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he's definitely older than 14 or 15 if he's a Sir, yeah. he looks younger than that, but whatever. That doesn't mean anything what he looks like. I wonder if they have actually listed his age. We'll have to do a little digging. In any case, Daemon is backfooted by the realization that, Willem's execution is required of him. Not just on the table, but if he doesn't do it, this whole thing might fall apart. And you might think, okay, no big deal. Daemon has no trouble killing this guy. It's just one guy, right? Daemon's willing to kill, But Daemon has this sense of loyalty. He employed this man. They had like a deal, and he's betraying Willem here. Daemon, Willem's a scoundrel, but it's like Ryan Condal describes it as like the mafia code. Like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I'll do a dirty deed for you. You do a dirty deed for me. We both get what we want. So this is a real betrayal, even though they were up to no good, even though they were in cahoots with the wrong kind of people. It's not a case of, you served your purpose, I can just take you out. He feels bad about it. He really does. Whether he should feel about it, he should feel bad about Rhea and doesn't feel bad about that and does feel bad about this. That's beside the point. Daemon feels bad. He really does. And this is relevant to his whole arc in this place. The fact that the man really does have guilt over things like this, over betrayals, whether it's this dude that he went into villainy with, or whether it's someone that actually matters a lot more to him, like his brother, who is, of course, waiting for him right after this execution in his room.
There could be a little bit of like, okay, if this guy's a scoundrel, he deserves to die. Wait, I'm a scoundrel. Do I deserve to do it? Someone's going to come out.
Yeah, right? Totally.
Also, I think it might be that Daemon swore to himself that he wouldn't cut more than 4 heads off. And now, here we go with number 5.
It's so great seeing Simon Strong out in the daylight. It was like surreal. It's like he's this figure I associate with the dark inside of Harrenhal. And here we are seeing like his vibrant purple coat and whatnot.
Serious fit. That looks good. That purple and gold. Yeah.
This is where all the money's gone to.
That's where all the money's gone. It's the real curse of Harrenhal is their fashion budget.
Also, Blue Floor points out, if Oscar were under 16, he would have a regent. He doesn't seem to have a regent.
That's not a universal, though. They don't always have regents.
It's a clear indication. Also, I looked at the actor, and he's 18.
The actor is 18? Okay, cool. Yeah, because remember, even Daron didn't have a regent. There's times where people don't have regents. But you're right. That would at least be a very common thing for someone in his spot. So it's really an indictment of monarchy, the fact that Willem takes all the blame. And people blame Daemon. It's not like he's not blamed for it. It's just that he has to take very little of the punishment here. All he has to do is feel bad about killing this man. And again, like I was pointing out in the beginning, there seemed to be like the distant sound of a cacophony of ravens as Daemon is approaching him. And then he swings his sword, kills him, kind of disassociates a little bit. Next thing you see, he's walking down the hall. But that might have been like a blood sacrifice. Like the old gods drank that blood. It was a man who follows the old gods too, Blackwood. So a little bit of that vibe, if you're thinking on the tinfoil level, then this was maybe something Alice was arranging from a very high level to get some power for the Werewood network.
That owl's eye view might have been a blood raven's eye view.
Well, he's not alive yet, but it
would be people within the werewood. So it would really be a view from the face of the werewood, you would think, right? Like from much lower. If Bran or Bloodraven or anyone who is tapped into that network saw it, which I do like to think about all the things that anyone in the network could have seen. Recently, I was thinking about how the werewood in King's Landing and the Red Keep, how it was in the scene where Viserys and Daemon are talking about like their mother and stuff like that. And the idea that if Alice is tapped in, like all the conversations that she witnessed in that grove, in that little...
Yeah.
Anyway, so I like thinking about what people would see. So you're not wrong. The idea that just picture Bran or Bloodraven or someone in the werewood watching this scene. Like, that's cool to witness, but not from that perspective.
Alice might have seen when Cole came to Alicent after he beat Joffrey to death.
Okay, yeah, that happened in front of that,
Yes,
and he
in
almost
front
killed
of
himself
there.
in front of that werewood, yeah.
Yeah, I love thinking about all the scenes that have been in front of a werewood over the years and seasons.
It would be neat to have the camera view from the face of the werewood, like a lower level, and it would be explicitly from the tree eye view, rather from the base rather than from the branches. So, yeah, let's talk more about the dream cycle here. After the execution, he's back in his fugue state of sorts, or maybe he's just always in it. You just never know when he's going to see something. So he walks back to his chambers. The black goat is there.
Question, do you think Alice as a skin changer only skin changes into an owl, or do you think she also is in this goat?
Probably in multiple animals. She seems too powerful to be limited to one animal, because it seems like the powerful skin changers can use multiple animals.
Yeah, so I think this is Alice. We do see her in this episode then, for sure, because she's the goat. She is the goat, right? Greatest of all time.
It's a black goat. She's got black hair.
Alice of all time. Yeah.
Greatest Alice. Greatest owl Alice time. Also this could be symbolic in other ways. Well, that's not symbolic. That's just trying to identify who the goat is, which I like a lot. I like this theory. So when he passes the goat the first time, it's the first morning where he's having hallucinations. Now, he had hallucinations that night where he saw his first night in Harrenhal, where there was like people marching past his door or what have you. But when he wakes in the morning that first time with blood on his hands, and he walks to the council chamber and he sees the goat, and then he sees the dogs after the chamber session. So maybe this is the bookend. That was kind of the beginning of his dream arc, when he sees that goat for the first time. And here he's going back to his bedroom and he finds his brother, the person that's sort of the culmination of all these dreams. So I wonder if that's maybe a hint that the dream cycle's over. We sort of thought it might have been over last episode, but we also knew that this scene was in the trailer, because there's a trailer shot of someone handing Daemon the crown, and you could see Shay had noticed that the hand was really old. So we're like, okay, yeah, that's a dream. So we knew there'd be at least one more dream, but this might be the last dream. One more thing, Sean, before I get your take on this. Viserys says all who wear it are crushed by it, and it's definitely true for him just by looking at him. Technically, the throne gave him that horrible disease, but he's not just talking about the disease, he's just talking about the sheer weight and responsibility and all the other stuff. And he asks, do you want it still? Daemon doesn't give an answer, but it feels like after everything he's been through, he might still say yes, but it wouldn't be a quick yes, and more likely it might be a no. How did you interpret that, Sean?
I kind of think so too. I think that's the growth that we're supposed to be seeing here, that he's getting past his own personal ambitions and realizing that he's got to be able to work with people, that he is a servant to the queen and these people are the servants to him, and you can't just do whatever you want, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So we see it kind of similarly, yeah. I
want to point out another thing here, though, that can you go back a couple images, Ashaya, to when Viserys is holding the crown out, sitting next to Daemon there? And remember we talked about how the different imagery represented different people that held Harrenhal at certain times, like the three dogs are like the Cleganes, and the goat is like Vargo Hoat, and the bats are like the Lostons. And we were wondering if we might see a flayed man representing the Boltons. Viserys is missing some skin in his face, and the red cross on his robe there is kind of reminiscent of the red body, upside down body of a flayed man. I'm saying it harkens to that image to me a little bit.
Right on. So these are definitely questions for us to consider, meaning, is this what the old gods wanted for him to see? What is Daemon's answer to this question? Was Alice guiding this? Is this the end of the dreams? That question will be answered by future episodes more directly. The rest we may not get answers on. And it seems like he has his army now, and he will be leaving Harrenhal. So just from that perspective, the fact that he won't be at Harrenhal, at least not for a while. He might go back, but in the immediate future, he's leaving. Will he have dreams when he's out there in the field? I'm guessing no, but it's not a confident no. What do you think, Sean? You think he might maybe still see some dreams when he's like elsewhere?
I doubt it. They don't have much more time for it in this episode. Maybe it continues in the future, but I feel like this is a Harrenhal thing and we're moving on from Harrenhal.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You feel similar, Ashaya?
I cannot imagine a world where Daemon is not in Harrenhal and is having these dreams still.
Right on.
Someone else? I don't know how
I expect
likely
someone
Kristen
else to
Cole
go to
is show up at
Harrenhal.
Harrenhal.
Yes, I would like
Right?
to see
Yeah.
someone else haunted in Harrenhal. Whoever comes to Harrenhal, I would like them to face this as well. I know other people might be like rolling their eyes. They don't want it from anyone else. But I would like that.
I like the dreams. Yeah.
I saw a really funny meme that was joking about like the idea of Gwaine Hightower in Harrenhal. And it was like, what is haunting Gwaine? He's like, ooh, a spider, you know?
Mom always liked you best. You know, like, what is the... So, and speaking of, let's talk about Alicent. She gets sewn up by Orwyle while lamenting her fall from power. We were wondering who she was talking to before this episode. It was like, oh yeah, Orwyle, of course. And he's not really... He's like the psychiatrist. He's just listening. He doesn't really have anything to say. He's like, yeah, go ahead and talk. I don't really have much to say in response here.
I feel like the thing he said was very symbolic. You'll have a scar, but it'll be easy to hide. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of that action in this show in general.
And of course, as we've said before, that's the exact same spot Rhaenyra's scar is that she gave her from the dagger. And in a way, Rhaenyra gave her this one because she, the riot was kind of her business.
Aegon's scars are not going to be so easy to hide. Aemond's scar is not so easy to hide.
It's true.
But Alicent and Rhaenyra's scars are easy to hide.
I just wanted to say, Olivia Cook said that this scar and Alicent realizing that this is the exact same thing that she did to Rhaenyra is what led her to leave, to go out of King's Landing. Olivia Cook said that she, like, this puts into perspective the absurdity of it all, and we're just doing the same thing to one another and all that. And so that's she, not just are we as viewers cottoning on to the parallel, Alicent herself has cottoned on to the parallel.
She needs to be able to skin change into an owl, Owlicent, and then she could go flying off and do whatever. She leaves with Sir Rickard Thorne, another member of the Kingsguard. This is actor Vincent Regan. You might recognize this guy. He was in the movie 300 and the movie Troy. In Troy, he was Achilles' second in command. He frequently had shocked face, like, oh, what have you done? You've flaunted in the face of the gods or whatever. So, and he's has a minor version of that here when Alicent's like, I don't know if I want to go back. And he just kind of like, oh, uh-oh.
I assume this guy is related to Alistair Thorne, same house or whatever.
Same house. So she gets in she starts floating around in the lake there, and it's not clear, but another time where the behind the scenes helps clarify what's going on here. The reason she doesn't just keep floating, the reason she starts to swim back to shore, it's not even clear that she's swimming to shore, is because she's had a realization. Exactly what, we don't know, but she's got a new sense of determination. So this was a good reset for her. She went out into the wilderness. Great music, great cinematography, and a pretty short scene altogether. It's probably the least Alicent's been in an episode, maybe at all. But they did a lot with that 2 minutes and showing her kind of baptizing herself, which is a very consistent symbol of renewal. And then she actually has that renewal, even though we're not entirely sure what clicked in her mind to make her go, all right, I have a new sense of purpose now, or something like that. But that was clarified in the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I felt like the other times when we saw her submersed in water, they were trying to clean herself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this time I felt like it was more of a baptism. Rita pointed out that this is very reminiscent of a famous painting, Ophelia, a character in Hamlet who was driven insane by the manipulative older men in her life.
Hey.
And she ended up drowning. Yeah.
Oh, I was saying we talked about this a little bit with Lady Gwyn last Saturday.
Yeah.
Also comparing it to Lady of the Lake in addition to Ophelia.
Yeah, good catch, y'all, and Ophelia. That's a great catch. And
That's
yeah,
honestly
I like
just-
the Lady of the Lake thing.
Just like real life John William Waterhouse painting type vibes when she's standing there. Like it's just a real life painting, you know?
Bogsy says, sends a super chat and says, Orwell says, I don't have a therapy link, Alicent. That's a good point. What color would the therapy link be? What metal is that? I don't know. Brass? No, that's been used already. What is the therapy metal? Silver? Silver is healing already. That's what I was thinking, but yeah, what to think about that a little more. Okay, the Red Sowing. Let's talk about the prime event. Oh, wait, Sean, you have one more take?
Well, about the Red Sowing, I was a little perplexed by that title at first, and I realized I'm pretty sure it's a play on the Red Wedding.
No, it's a play on the sowing of, because they're dragon seeds.
Well, right. I think they were going to sow these seeds, but
Mhm.
instead, a bunch of them died. I think they were, instead of a marriage, a bunch of people died. It's like,
I think red
Okay.
is a color attached to anything that's bloody. I don't think it's a reference to the Red Wedding. I think they both refer to
Okay.
the same concept. But you're not wrong to connect them in a way. Like, just it's not quite as direct, I think. But you could also call this the worst Targaryen family reunion imaginable. It's like, a Targaryen family reunion without at least 30 burnings is considered a dull affair, right? So Rhaenyra faces one last obstacle before the choosing. You see all these people arriving. She's watching them come up. And there's a variety of types. They're not all silver-haired. There's some brown-haired people in there. There's this little variety, men and women, of course.
I like you can see her seeing Ulf walk up right here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love seeing the recognizable ones. That's my only tiniest complaint. I wish we had gotten to know some of the ones that didn't survive ahead, so we wouldn't be quite so clear who
Yes.
the key characters are. Like, I wish we had gotten to know a little bit of Silver Dennis, or like this girl that worked at the Seven Maesters or whatever. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Some of the girls who worked at Mother's, for example, the girl that Hugh, saves that gets away, right? Like, there's a few things.
That girl did get away, didn't she?
Yeah, like we could see her again.
So, but oh well, very small, like I said, very small complaint. It would have been cool, but, I understand that would have, setting up other characters is difficult to do. There's so many characters, people would you're setting up Silver Dennis instead of more scenes with Bela? Like, people would have absolutely complained about that. So, the Dragon Keepers are pissed. The Dragon Keepers are like a monastic order. They're very religious. And they hated the idea of Stefan Darkland trying, and the fact that it didn't work was kind of proof to them that it shouldn't have been done, and it shouldn't be done again. And one of their own died during that. That's definitely coloring their opinion here. Like, one of their people died. And look at these guys. They always have ash on them. They're always like just proud to be covered in soot. Which
I didn't expect a Dragon Keeper walkout strike. It makes a lot of sense, but I wasn't expecting them to kind of have solidarity with one another and stand up against Rhaenyra.
Yeah, real labor strike, huh? Yeah. The Dragon Keepers Union is...
Yeah, they were inspired, you could say, the writers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the writers' strike inspired the Dragon Keepers strike.
The anti-writers strike.
You see what happens when you go and do all this without the Dragon Keepers' help? All this, it's chaos and death. And anyway... One of them says the only magic, well, the one who speaks says the only magic of old Valyria left in this sad world, which is just such a powerful statement on their worldview. Like, we are the keepers of this fallen empire, this fallen everything, not just their magic, but this little shred of what remains. And they call it an abomination. And yeah, the dragons, they more than anyone see the dragons as gods. They're named after gods. The Meleys, Syrax, Viserion, these are gods of Valyria, Balerion, all these ones. So, but their labor strike doesn't stop her.
Smokes and your storm
sea
clouds
smoke
and your
storm
sunfires.
moon
Those
dancer.
are your second generation, dragon name.
Yep, there is a bit of a mix there. That's right. So she gives a speech to the assembled.
Can I point something out real quick?
Yeah.
That she shares a look with Misaria where she they walk out on her and she looks up at Misaria like, oh, I guess we're doing this,
Yeah.
See? Yeah.
And it was Emma D'Arcy's idea to walk amongst the dragon seeds to give the speech. And it was Paddy's idea to be in the decrepit version of himself rather than his regular, just normal kingly raiment. Which probably added, another few $1,000s to the budget, but he thought it was more appropriate. He's like, I'll do that scene, but only if I'm in my decrepit version. And they're like, all right, fine. Go ahead, Paddy, you get what you want. So yeah, same thing here. It was Emma's idea to do that. I thought that was pretty effective. Does Rhaenyra believe what she tells them here? Is she being naive when she says, we get all these dragons and the Greens they'll just be overwhelmed and they'll have to bend the knee? Like, did you bend the knee when the Greens were overwhelming you? No. So I don't know. Does she actually believe it, or is she naive? I'm not sure. If she's just telling them that to pump them up, like, look, you all are going to help create peace here. Or what do you think, Sean? Do you think she actually believes that?
She did at least say, God's willing. She said, if we do this, we could end the war without shedding any blood. God's willing. So at least she was attaching a sort of hope to it. But I'll wait. I have some more thoughts, but I'll wait till we get a little deeper. But you had a minor complaint about this. I have a big complaint about this.
Okay, we'll get to that, I guess. So yeah, one line I really like is it must be the dragon who speaks. It also kind of sums up the let the gods decide vibe of this episode. Just follow the path the gods have laid out for you. Whatever that may be, whatever your interpretation of that may be, which is the problem with that, but it still is consistent throughout the episode. April May sends a message and says, the Red Sowing is also the Red Sowing. Dragons of thread, sowing, dragons of flesh. Oh, very good. That's what Helena said back in episode 7, younger Helena, when she was cupping the spider over the shell, and Aegon was like, you're weird. And Aemond was like, don't say that about your... and that's what her line was. Dragons of thread, sowing, dragons of flesh. Yeah, very good. The Red Sowing. Good catch. So I love the awe and danger that comes into Rhaenyra's voice when she begins to speak specifically of Vermithor. The music changes to add gravitas to this. She's like, he's called the Bronze Fury. We shall go to him now. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then she calls to him and stands before them like a god herself, just facing them as the dragon emerges behind her. A little bit like Daenerys with Drogon taking off behind her, but without the like demonic overtones. But it is still pretty dark.
And like the poster from season 1, as they said, right?
So Rhaenyra says he's not quite as big as Vhagar, but he's probably angrier, more ferocious. She also says that, so that's notable. She communes with him by putting her hand on his snout, which we saw Daemon do back in season 1 after singing the song to summon him. And she closes her eyes, and it's like a little bit of communion. She has this feeling of great power while touching him, like as if something passes back and forth between them, nonverbal communication. It's confirmed in the BTS that this happens, and that's why Rhaenyra has this like look when she takes her hand off, like she just felt this power through him and is sort of exalting in it for a few moments before she turns back to face the dragon seeds again. We also see Jon Snow do this with Drogon in season 7 or 8, where Daenerys is actually on Drogon's back, and Drogon's like, arr, and then Jon just like very, holds his hand out slowly and cautiously, but bravely, and the dragon kind of submits a little bit, and yeah. It's definitely some familiar elements here that we've seen before, but slightly different variations on them. I like how she says, okay, it's time, let the dragon must speak, and then she just gets the hell out of there. Walks back up and goes up on the balcony. It's like, all right. Now, watching people die impassively is a little new for her, and it's a little disconcerting, and it's a part of this whole like elevating herself to godlike status vibe that we've been discussing on and off throughout this episode.
Let me go ahead and bring up my complaint here, because it appears very much to me as though she didn't just like walk off and observe them dying passively. They were blocked in.
Yes. As
she passed by, the guards closed them behind her.
Yes.
And when people started to run out, they were stopping them from running out. And I don't know if that was her plan or intention or what her plan was, but and maybe even on some level, she felt like she needed to force this to happen, even if a bunch of them die. And even if that's the case, which is kind of dark, I don't like it, but it still seems like an unwise way to do this. Why not send in a dozen at a time? Why risk getting them all burned up and all at once? Send a dozen in. It seems like she's at least maybe willing to mislead them. The way she says, we could end this war if one of you just drives a dragon. And she kind of walks up. Look, see, I touched him. Now you go do it. She knows this dragon could open fire and burn them. I feel like she's giving them some false confidence about this whole process.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot to say about this, Sean. Yes.
So why not bring 12 in? Don't let the other people even know. And if the dragon goes crazy and burns them all, like, all right, next 12, maybe there's this fear that if they see the other people get burned, then they'll be too scared to go try it. I'm not even sure that's true, but if it is, don't let them see it.
Well, she did say that. She definitely expressed that fear before. Like she said, no one will try again after hearing what happened to Stefan Darklyn. So I think that at least is consistent.
So don't let them know. Keep them in different
That's
chambers.
Dishonest too, though. Like, wouldn't you have a problem with that too? Like if you're hiding the consequences, like isn't that just as bad?
Right. Well, I think they're both, I don't know, immoral, but this is immoral and unwise. They all could have randomly been killed. She needs to save a few. And let's just say, for example, only 14 people had showed up. Would they have waited till they had 45 to stick out there? Say 200 showed up. Would they have crammed all 200 all in one? Clearly, they could have been broken into smaller groups.
I'm not okay. Let me interject. Let me just interject briefly here. I'm not sure that the outcome was that predictable. That Vermithor would just go crazy and kill everyone. I don't think that was that predictable of an outcome, and I don't know that Rhaenyra could have guessed that it would.
Right, I don't know if it's predictable, but it's certainly a chance.
Well, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure she should expect that for it all to go that badly. Like Seasmoke left, he didn't go berserk. He killed the people that were right in front of him, then he left.
Yeah, right, but that same flame, if 14 people had been standing behind those people, would have been hit by it, like they were here. And again,
I'm not arguing that
also
part.
Possible. It's also possible that the dragon, the dragon keepers, if they had been there, they might have known better. Said this is too many people. The dragon's going to freak out, right?
Maybe
they may have had some counsel that she lost.
That's a good point.
Maybe she's not wise because she's not educated in this whole process. But it still seemed like those guards were keeping people in, and that seems unforgivable.
I think you're right, Sean. That's the point. She messed up. Like that's the point here. She didn't take her time. She didn't have the approval of the administration, the organization to make this go properly. She specifically had a moment with Vermithor to make sure that like they would, feel gassed up. I think it was a manipulation, but I think it was effective. That was the right thing to do, is to make them see, oh, it is possible to bond with this dragon. And yeah, you're right. She should have split it into smaller groups, like slightly smaller groups. Just do groups of 5, do whatever, split it in half. She knows she still has Silverwing to go. I think you're right that she messed up, but I don't think the show is portraying it as she did the right thing. I think they're showing that she was rushed. She was pushing this, and a lot of people are unhappy with how she did it. If she had talked to Jace and the Dragon Keepers and all these people and had it out and they'd taken some time, they might have been like, well, here's a compromise. Let's do this. Let's do that. That's not what happened. I don't think we're meant to admire Rhaenyra for how she handled this. We see that she's making them stay there. It's very dark. Like, I don't think this is admirable of her. Like, you're right.
I don't necessarily think they're trying to make us admire her for it, but I do feel like it worked out. Like at the end of this episode, now Vhagar is in trouble. I don't think we're like, Rhaenyra was bad to the small folk.
Now,
the title of the last episode was small folk. I don't think she's going to face repercussions for this.
I think you're wrong. You're just plain wrong. Like, just think about it. Like, she has opened herself up to 3 new dragon riders in this episode. You think all 3 of those dragon riders are gonna? You think Jace is wrong? I don't think so.
No, everyone was against her on this.
I don't think she's going to face the repercussions for having endangered and sacrificed those innocent
people.
I
mean, you think the small folk are going to take revenge on her, then maybe not. But like, of course they aren't. They're powerless. Like, why would she face repercussions for that?
I don't think any of her counselors are going to either. I don't think.
Well, why would they? Why would they? Why would Daemon face repercussions for what he did to the Bracken peasants? It's the same thing. Like, royals don't face consequences for what they do to Lowborn.
I guess I just find it ironic or maybe frustrating to me that we're seeing some of the stories, the eyes of the small folk. Misaria, Hugh, Ulf, and the last episode was named small folk. And it seems like they're trying to show us the effects that the wars, these angry princes or whatever have, how it affects the average person. But this is like a specific mistake, whether it's irresponsible or rushed or greedy or, whatever it is that Rhaenyra did here that caused a bunch of innocent people to die. And I feel like there should be a repercussion, not so much for her like giving dragons to people who aren't ready for it, but for her endangering these people's lives. I feel like Misaria should be upset with her, or maybe Ulf himself, or Hugh or whoever, be like, you could have got us killed. Why didn't you tell us?
Well, she did tell them. Like, that was very clear. She told them they could die. Like, I think every single one of them knew there was a very good chance they would die. I agree with you that, like, and Ashaya pointed the same thing out, that locking them in was bad. But they all knew that they were not unlikely, if not likely, to die. So I don't agree with that second part, because I think they all knew what they were getting into. No one was forced to be there. Anyone who, like, Alan didn't go, and he had the choice. There are a lot of people
They were
that
forced to stay in there. Though.
Well, yeah, but they
You know?
were told they could die before they were forced to stay in there. And again, we're not arguing about being forced to stay in there. But we all agree on that part. That was not cool. They should have had the chance to change their mind. She took away their ability to back out. But she didn't mislead them in the first place. That's the part I guess I disagree with. But and about the names of the episodes, I kind of see what you're saying, but like the last episode was really focused on the small folk too. They could have called this one Small Folk 2 Electric Boogaloo. But but it is more about the Red Sowing. I think this one is less about the small folk. Because we only see, it's really Ulf and Hugh, but mostly it's Rhaenyra watching them. Like that's the kind of like or Vermithor's point of view. You know what I mean? Like I don't think we didn't get to know any of these characters. We didn't hear their names. I feel
like it was about the using of the small folk. Like it wasn't really truly about like them. It was about how the nobility uses them and how they're
like acceptable losses.
Yeah.
That's
it was my biggest
right,
complaint about last season and Rhaenys too. Like in a lot of ways, Rhaenys would be my favorite character, except she bust up through the dragon pit and
killed a bunch of people.
Who knows how many people. And if you could just remove that one thing, she might be my favorite character. But I can't just remove that thing. And up to this point, this season, Rhaenyra has been my favorite character. But all of a sudden now I'm like, well, crap, she can't be my favorite character up to this, you know?
Who is it now then?
Alicent?
Alicent, maybe. She's done some tough stuff too, but nothing this bad. So.
Maybe she has. I'm not sure if she has.
I don't think anything this bad, yeah.
Well, how bad is this though? Like every single person that signed up for it knew they were not unlikely to die. Like I don't go as far as you all in the darkness.
The thing is that even if they knew, I still think she could have done more to protect them. Send less at a time, or have them not be. Well, again, spread them out, or you know.
I'm repeating myself a little, but.
Yeah.
She did not know this would happen. She had no clue Vermithor would do this. She's never seen anything like it. No one's ever seen anything like this. So I don't agree that she should have guessed this was a possible outcome. Maybe she should have, but I don't call it irresponsible.
I think like wow. To tell the guards to keep them in there. Like if she said, she might have said, maybe she just said, don't let anyone leave, and the guards didn't realize that.
They didn't know exactly how bad it would get.
Maybe she didn't give him a contingency or something.
Yeah, which I agree with. That's part of the irresponsibility, but still, I don't think that anyone could have expected what happened to happen.
Well, that's the point. That's where I would disagree. She has seen something like this. When Sea Smoke burned the Dragon Keeper.
That's not what happened, though. That's not what happened. Sea Smoke killed the one guy and then left, and caught one other Dragon Keeper in the flesh. Did not go berserk and try to kill everyone there. That's what I'm talking about. That's the difference.
Right, this did go farther.
That's specifically what I'm referring to.
Flames blasting onto that platform. She just put everyone out there in harm's way. So.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree with that part. That they should have maybe been standing farther back. But here's another angle to this. Is that everyone wants to be there. They want this risk. They want to become a dragon rider. Like Kieran Bew, who plays Hugh, when the other guy stepped forward first, he said in the interview, he's like, at that point, he realizes he's made a mistake. What if someone else claims the dragon before him? Then his chance is gone. So there's a lot more to this than just they were trapped in there and they didn't have a choice and there's a lot of danger. I mean, yeah, everybody knew there was a ton of danger. The danger probably went beyond more than what anyone expected. And maybe she could have guessed at something like that, but she definitely didn't see it coming.
I guess that speaks again, though, to the maybe mishandling of how it was executed, which I don't think any of us are saying that it was handled perfectly.
Yeah.
Which is that, like, Hugh's there, like, thinking, like, man, I should go for, like he doesn't really have a good chance at, like, you just say who's gonna go first. It's just a weird way of handling it all.
Well, the other thing is she doesn't know what she's doing. She's like, well, and even if the Dragon Keepers had been there, I agree with what you said before, Sean, that if the Dragon Keepers had been there, they might have been like, wait, this could get a lot worse than you think. But maybe even they wouldn't know that, because maybe they don't even know. Still, let's assume they do. So their lack is a big problem. Their strike is a big problem, that Rhaenyra went on to the site without OSHA regulations, the people that know what the regulations should be. So yeah, that's definitely a strike against her.
I just can't help but think about how much she should have just done 2 groups. She knows she has Silverwing. I think if she had just split them in groups of 2, a lot of my issues would have been solved.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good point. I think that and maybe she should have done Silverwing first, but she was more concerned about finding a writer for Vermithor. So yeah, there's definitely some mistakes made here. But I think
want to say why she wants a rider for Vermithor. She wants the dragon that's the best shot at defeating
that's
Vhagar,
easy. Right? But if she goes with the more docile dragon first, then she has a chance of, yeah. But again, I don't know that she expected so many people to die. Like, the scope of death was beyond what anyone expected. And the other thing is that they're doing it differently. This is not the way Targaryens mount dragons. You go in by, like, that's what they tried before with Steffon Darklyn, and it didn't work, partly because he's not Targaryen. This was her new way of like, wow, this is something that can happen. Addam was chosen by the dragon. So that's why putting everyone in the room does make sense. It's not necessarily the best idea, but it's not just random. It's because you want the dragon to select from all the available candidates. And yeah, of course, what went wrong did go wrong, and maybe she's seen that coming. But
I go back to what I was saying before about, like, what if only 22 people had showed up? They wouldn't have felt like we need to wait till we have exactly 45. Like, I think that the idea of the dragon choosing is a reason to have more people in there, but not everyone in there. That's my concern, is that you could have.
But how do you make? Yeah, she could have just been told some of them to stay. She would have had to order some of them to stay back.
Should have done is said, we have two dragons. We have Vermithor and we have Silverwing. Describe the two dragons. Half of the people will want the biggest and baddest dragon, Vermithor, or they'll feel some sort of kinship. Or some people will choose one and some people will choose the other. I think you should give people the option, and then again, you don't have all your dragon eggs in one basket, as it were. You know.
Yeah.
And there may also be some factor along the lines of the dragon's more likely to accept the braver person or something along that line, right?
Yeah.
So
and they just don't know.
Who are the first 10 volunteers? You might have a higher shot of one of those people making it, since they are ostensibly more brave, I guess.
Yeah.
But if they don't, if something crazy happens, the dragon rejects them or burns them all alive or something, okay, we got 30 some more people to still try it with. So anyway, all this, I don't think anyone's arguing it. She did it perfectly. How bad it was, how immoral or misleading or organized, or the dragon keepers could have done better, are all things to wonder about. It's interesting. It generates discussion for us.
Definitely.
But it just frustrates me. I just feel like someone else, in the same way that maybe some people are afraid to stand up to Aemond or Joffrey, whoever, because you might get in trouble. I feel like someone should have said, hey, Rhaenyra, maybe, someone should have spoken up. And she doesn't seem like a leader who wouldn't listen to advice. But she's really rushing through this. She feels like this is ordained by the gods. And I wonder how many other mistakes like this she might end up making.
Sean, someone does stand up to her, the Dragon Keepers. I mean, and Jace, we see two. Not that Jace kind of doesn't want it to happen at all. So
but they're not standing up to her for the how to do it better. They don't want her to do it at all.
I meant more this specific moment of putting everyone out there.
Yeah, Sean meant like how to do it better, not to do it at all. You know what I mean? Like he could have, but she didn't ask her counsel, and I don't think that would have mattered. I don't think they would have. I mean, I agree with you. Like, seeking out advice might have been smart, but what advice would they have had? Like, no one knows what's going on here. No one knows what they're doing. Like, why is she going to take advice about dragons from people that don't know anything about dragons?
Hopefully, just to Shay's advice. Save half the people for the other dragon.
Yeah. To be clear, I don't know about you both, but I don't think this is a mistake on the writer's part. I think it's a mistake on Rhaenyra's part, personally. Yeah. Like, I think it was intentional for her to be sloppy.
So the other aspect of this thing that's interesting is the guards blocked the door. That happened. But I'm not sure they would have continued to, given how bad it was. But then they all got torched too. And then no one could leave because there was burning bodies blocking the exit.
Yeah.
And that's why people started running down the stairs, because there was nowhere else to go. And that's when Ulf gets knocked off the wall. And that turned out to be pretty fortunate for him, though not as much as for some other people. And this is like they're put in a very tough spot. Like I said, they run down the stairs, even though that puts them into the dragon's cave. But the platform is a complete death trap. It's turned into the worst spot possible. Like you said, Sean, it's so many people there. That made it worse. No one could run. And then the bodies themselves became obstacles, burning bodies. So Hugh becomes kind of the focus in the chaos and darkness. It's a classic movie and TV show thing to do. You have chaos and you follow someone. That way you have some guide through the chaos, someone that you can stick with and at least have a sense of what's happening, so it's not too chaotic. You still have it's still a movie or a TV show. You still have to be able to follow the action. And it's really insane, right? Vermithor is very godlike in this scene, a very dark god, making a banquet of all the seeds. Like I said at the beginning of the intro, it was like R'hllor, a god of fire and shadow, and eating them one by one. It's spectacular and terrifying at the same time. And Hugh finds himself behind a rock next to this woman. They're both kind of panicking a little, and they make a run for it. Vermithor notices. They separate. Hugh pushes her out of the way as the maw is closing on them, and they both dodge. Basically, he shoves her to the side and then dives out of the way. And then they make a run for it, but she's faster than him. And then he distracts Vermithor. And this is a point where Ryan Condal says that, yeah, we're not trying to get too deep into explaining the mystery, but absolutely there is behavior and qualities and things that the character and the dragon are connecting on. We're not meant to know what all they are, but it's easy to come up with a few guesses here, in my opinion. Like, Hugh is not afraid. He rages back at the dragon, which Vermithor has probably not seen that sort of thing. Like, wow, this dude is, well, he's different. Maybe I won't snack on him. That's something.
It's like when you meow back at your cat.
Or bark back at a dog that's barking at you, yeah.
I feel like we have seen in the show and the story in general, different methods and different degrees of dragon blood, and it makes sense that Martin and Condal would not want there to be designated rules, and that there wouldn't be designated rules. That different, as we said earlier, like different dragons would have different personalities, the point in their life, their temperament at the moment, how hungry they are, all these things could play into it, and so it might play out a little differently each time. But a friend we were watching with, Adrian, you guys know Adrian, she pointed out a commonality, at least in these two, was they both seem prepared to die. They seem ready. They had accepted their fate. They're like, well, here it is. I'm in front of the dragon. It can kill me if it wants to. And that maybe on some level calmed the dragon or gave the dragon acceptance of them or something. I don't know.
I like that take, and I agree. I wrote a similar thing about Ulf. I didn't write it the same way, but I wrote that Ulf didn't panic, that he gave into the moment. And so it's not quite the same as what Adrian was saying, but I think I like the way Adrian put it even better. Which is, it is, and it fits really well with the theme of the episode of gods and being chosen and just submitting, just faith. Like, what happens, it's the will of the gods. And also just Hugh's saving this woman here, this moment of selflessness. I think that might have mattered. I mean, this was the Jacaerys' dragon. Jacaerys was the old king, the conciliator. He was perhaps the best king that's ever lived in Westeros as far as the Targaryens, and made life better for a lot of people, including the common folk. Not as much, perhaps, as his wife, good Queen Alicent, which we'll talk about in a minute, but maybe that matters. And as far as the fear thing, the submitting thing, also, remember when Stefan went up there, the Dragon Keeper's like, don't show any fear, don't show any fear. That's level 1, maybe. Like, don't show the fear. Actually not having it would be level 2, and level 3 would be like just full submission to whatever happens,
Or, there's always the famous, you have to be scared in order to be brave. That however afraid Stefan or Ulf or whoever were, Stefan, I don't know if he was prepared to die, right? He was maybe scared at first and then gained confidence, but I don't think he was really ready to die. But I think Ulf and Hugh were ready to, maybe because of all the carnage they had just witnessed. Like, well, there's nothing I can do about this. I guess I just have to be ready to die. That maybe is a way to distinguish them from Stefan's failure.
So clearly, Sean, if you were to redo the scene, you would put Notorious B.I.G.'s Ready to Die album on in the background to properly psych up the Dragon Keepers, Dragon Seat.
Hugh is a grandson of Jacaerys, right? Who he might just remind Vermithor of Jacaerys, look like Jacaerys, smells like Jacaerys. That's exactly what I'm getting at. There's a lot of things that would make him think about his previous writer, his only writer, whatever. 1, 2, it's very, very funny for the writer of Vermithor to be the son of Sarah, who Jacaerys just basically disowned and did away with and was real mad at.
The child of his that he got along with the least best by far out of 13 children. Yeah.
And in an interview with Kieran Bew that was really good about this, he talked about what similarities he felt Jacaerys and Vermithor and Hugh shared and all of these things. And he spoke to Jacaerys having a need to control things that he couldn't always control, and that he felt that was mirrored in Hugh, which we see with him, like the sense of powerlessness that he has about the death of his daughter, which is also something that Jacaerys would have experienced because he would have lost a lot of children. And anyways,
the
Kieran,
powerlessness with Sarah too. Like he just could not control her, and she wouldn't behave, and they couldn't reach a chord, and he was so mad at her and all that. Yeah, you're right. That's a great.
Yeah, so clearly the actor playing Hugh has put a lot of thought into his character, the meaning of his character being a son of Sarah, a grandson of Jacaerys, and it's a great interview. I recommend looking it up.
And he read all of Fire and Blood too, so he's one of those.
Yeah, he scoured it for like any hint about things that would have to do with Sarah and his story, and yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, in Fire and Blood, Sarah is said to have had 3 bastard children. One of whom looked like Jacaerys when he was young. So our headcanon, I think a lot of people's headcanon is that's the one right there that meets that last description. So yeah, great fit, great scene, great moment all around. And it's something though to add to bring it back to Rhaenyra. She clearly moved closer during all this. She was up on that balcony, and then as things progressed, she got closer and wanted to see what was happening and got on the platform. And if you look closely, even in this moment, she's there. She is standing up on that platform. You can see her on the platform, even in these shots where it's just Hugh and Vermithor. It's not just Hugh and Vermithor. Rhaenyra is standing up there, and you can see her. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and adds a little more to the ominousness of Rhaenyra's vibe here. Like, she's just watching it happen. She's a little impassive. People are dying. We already talked about some of the other issues there.
Can I ask you, Sean, what's your opinion on Hugh after his comportment, to use Oscar Tully's word?
Comportment, nice.
What's your view on Hugh during this chaos? I feel that you might have expected him to be real cutthroat or awful to other people after punching someone for food, but I don't feel that he did show himself to be heartless.
No, I don't think so. It seemed like he was trying to save that girl there, and
she gets away. He saves her life. He does more than he
succeeded.
saves her life.
She got away.
And as much as he punched someone in the face, he also saved a woman's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I feel like they're presenting him as a protagonist. I don't think he's going to be a villain. He might not be, I don't know how to say this, qualified for the protagonist role he gets, right? He still might screw up with the dragon or something, but I have hopes for him. I was frustrated that he punched that guy in the face and took his food, but I was frustrated because I thought he was a good guy, and that wasn't a good guy thing to do. So now he's back to seeming like a good guy. For the most part, at least. This is all maybe a little inconsiderate of his wife.
Yeah,
we'll see how that plays out.
He shook a little of that good off, but yeah, he took a little bad by doing that. Yeah, shades of gray, of course, as humans tend to be. Very interesting. Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, he's a different person now. Rhaenyra said so. And that look he gave, he looked up. Like, it was a little dark, I think, the way he looked after realizing he had succeeded.
Yeah, he has an intensity to him.
Yeah. It's part of the rage, but also like he thought he was going to die a minute ago, and it's an unusual situation to find yourself in. So it's hard to exactly read the emotions there, but it looked a little dark, just like Rhaenyra's look was. Elizabeth sends a super chat, says there's a parallel between Daemon killing Willem and Rhaenyra letting these people die. The ends justify the means. Yeah. It isn't about, in this case, this isn't a point about being good or bad. This is a point about getting things done. And yeah, Rhaenyra is trying to get dragon riders, and she is willing to sacrifice people to do it.
And Daemon needs to get these river lords.
Daemon is willing, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great parallel there. And again, why it points to me saying that we're not meant to think fondly of Rhaenyra's choices here, and we're not meant to really think fondly of Daemon's choices here either.
Nope, I agree. Yeah, and it's not a modern reading. I think people in the story would have people living in the setting would judge them for some of these actions too. Some of it's modern. We can't help divorce ourselves from our modern viewpoints, but it's the exercise of trying to put ourselves in that world and judging based on the values of that world, I think, is interesting.
And I think you make a good point when you did bring up earlier, what did Misaria think of this? And because not only is she a small folk, a member of the small folk, but she has Rhaenyra's ear quite closely, and they're intimately acquainted and all that. So it is a salient point whether Misaria would be like, we went too far, or if Misaria herself is like, it was worth it if we're going to help all small folk to sacrifice 40 small folk.
Don't forget that Misaria is the one that encouraged her to go this route and said with Stefan that it was a good idea no matter the result. She's like, even after he got burned and the other Dragon Keepers burned and Sea Smoke ran away, she's like, it was still worth it. So I think Misaria, and Misaria was willing to let people die for the riot too. Yeah,
and that, right, these are slippery slopes. You know what I mean? When you start to justify things that, this maybe isn't even the best analogy, but one might argue it was a good idea for Aegon to fly into battle. Never mind the result. Maybe. Yeah, you're right. It's these are very hard things to judge. Yeah, like it's civil war, and that by itself causes us, as we've said, you have to reduce your ethical barrier. Like the bar for what's good and acceptable changes when it's a life or death struggle. But of course, it's not always that simple, and labeling it a life or death struggle in the first place. So, but like sometimes you could argue maybe in a time of war, maybe different ethics apply. But you could also argue in a time of war, it's more important than effort to maintain your ethics.
You got to hold on to that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So let's talk about Silverwing. It's a little.
Can I talk about Ulf real quick?
Absolutely.
Before
talk about Ulf real
quick. Before he gets to Silverwing, I just want to say two things. He's probably drunk. Right?
I
he's
think
always
so too.
drunk. He's at Dragonstone. I'm sure wine is available to them. He never gets to drink it.
The fourth time I watched the episode, when she was in the room giving the speech, I was looking for refreshment. Like, were they served refreshment? They probably were. Like, she's not going to have all those people there and not give them something to eat. So yeah, Ulf was probably...
Ulf would of course he's going to take part of that. So he's drunk, first of all. He doesn't want to be the one to have to, tame Vermithor, so he's hanging back. We see lots of shots of him being scared, and then he gets knocked off, as we saw. I just want to point out this really funny character beat for him, where he gets knocked off and he comes to, and he's like, still probably drunk and out of it and discombobulated, and he is next to a torch, and he sees it in his peripheral, and he just jumps like he thinks it's a dragon flame or something. It's such a funny little small beat, but I don't know. I just really loved it, and it's true because it also speaks to the kind of terror and trauma that he's gone through, and it's kind of interesting to me because is it theoretically possible? I don't think they'll go there, but I could see Ulf or Hugh having real trauma about this experience that they just went through and being a little scared of Dragon Flame.
Ulf maybe not, because he was drunk through the whole thing. He's like, I don't even remember it very well, but Hugh's going to have nightmares.
But then, yes, Ulf runs away, and you can lead off there, but I just want to, it's underrated little moment where he literally goes, oh, fuck. This is another reason I like the character so much, is I'm always drawn to actors that can pull off drunk acting really well. It's just one of my favorite, genres of acting is drunk acting. I don't know why. I'm not even a drinker myself. I don't get it. So, but his hand gestures too, they really it's like Jack Sparrow. His hands are just going in weird, he's pointing a finger, and he's just doing all these weird things with his hands. Like when he falls down in front of Silverwing, he's got his hand like this. It's just and even right here, his fingers are pointing out. They're just splayed in unnatural ways. It reads drunk to me. Yeah. His body isn't completely under control. Which also brings us to the dragon rider connection. And if he's drunk, is Silverwing feeling the intoxication? And I think Silverwing looks a little tipsy as she flies.
And Ulf isn't a super aggressive guy, which might be relevant because Silverwing is one of the least aggressive dragons. In the book, Silverwing kills nobody during the sowing, just like here. So, Vermithor's anger might reflect Jacaerys in some ways, like Kieran Bew said, his desire to control things, and even though he's a benevolent, that's still a thing. They can get angry about. In Alicent's case, definitely a woman of peace. She endeavored to change laws and make things more equitable. For example, she got rid of First Night. Well, she didn't get rid of it. She made it illegal. It still happened in some places. Because some people still do it now, like Roose Bolton says, the Umbers still do it. I mean, he basically did it himself to make Ramsay. And First Night is really relevant because it's where some of these dragon seeds came from. Not the recent ones that were born in brothels, but the whole concept of it, goes back quite a ways and includes Dragonstone. Ulf doesn't panic, like we said before. He just kind of gives into it. He's like maybe the being drunk is part of it, but I love how much he was just stumbling around and then he just steps on her eggs. Like, it doesn't seem like he actually damaged an egg, because we've seen these sacks once or twice before, and it looks like he just broke the sack open and didn't actually damage the egg. But how does the dragon know that? How does he know that in the moment? For all he knows, he's like, it's like Jurassic Park, or one of those moments where you hear the dinosaur behind you, you can't get away. And and worse, he's just stepped on her eggs. Like, you have no hope here, man.
Can I tell you a few theories here about Ulf and Silverring? One, he stepped in the egg sack thing and now he smells like her eggs, and so she thinks he's her baby, and that's how it happened? Okay, one. Two, Alicent was notably a public speaker. She was a talker. Ulf is a yapper. He has the gift of gab.
I love it.
Senses that. Three, theoretically, Alicent was a secret wino. She secretly liked to drink a little bit, and Silverring could smell the booze on Ulf and was into that. Those are my three theories.
Her favorite vintage, even.
Yeah. And I shared it with Tom Bennett on Twitter, and he liked it along with some memes I had shared.
He is definitely living his best life, Tom Bennett. Him in the BTS, he is just having such a good time on set, and he's like the guy that they can count on to like have a smile when the camera's on him and say something witty. He's loving it. He's a great cast member.
I wanted to say that Jurassic Park for sure, but I also think this had a lot of Alien vibe. This whole, especially
you're right.
The egg and the goop and the monster coming over him.
You remember in season 1, they brought that up when Daemon took the eggs out. They specifically said they were using that as the model.
Oh, good
and
call.
That's obviously, they were just riffing on, like they were continuing what Daemon scene had set up, that they're gooey, sack-filled, So yes, you're correct. That was the original intention, and it continued to resonate in this scene.
You don't have to agree with the way they did all the dragon bonds, but I do love the choice to do them differently, to have each one have a pretty significant vibe, right? Ulf's vibe, even though it happens like one cave over from Vermithor, was very different. Even though there was darkness and dragons and, the fear and all that stuff. And Sea Smoke was extremely different too. And we'll have to see what happens with Rhaena, who is our next potential dragon seeker, not a dragon siege. He's an actual Targaryen, so there is a difference here. Mad Hatter says, intrigued by Rhaena, foreshadowing wild dragons? Well, yeah, a scene that says a lot without a single line of dialogue. I didn't really realize that, and it's like, oh yeah, no one says anything in this whole scene, do they? Now, there isn't much to be seen. No one's even standing next to each other. We have Lady Jane standing here looking like Mon Mothma. I totally love it. But no one's actually standing near each other that just could have a conversation. Rhaena's just like already like working her way out of this crowd so she can run off. and as soon as the gates close, she's off, We were all predicting this would be sheep stealers she was turning around to look at. And I was like, nope, it was just the Eyrie.
I wanted to point out, we see from behind in the episode, this this gold cloak that Jane Eyre is in that's gorgeous. And then we just see the very top of her gown. They never give us a good look in the episode of this beautiful costume they make for her.
Give us the rest.
In the stills, they give it to us finally. And if you're like me and you were like, give me the whole dress, let me see this dress, here it is for you.
Ooh,
I'm zooming in.
That is Aaron.
And you're about to see in a second as it clarifies. It even has her sigil up on the chest.
She's serving Aaron realness right there.
Yeah. She is. So
that is with the two guards with the very prominent Aaron sigils there.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's
good.
wild to do so much costuming work and have such a beautiful gown and never give a shot in the episode.
I guess they just kind of didn't realize they did that. Oh, whoops, we didn't show that, did we? I know, it's amazing to have something like that and then to barely show it, So this subplot fits extremely well with the overall episode theme. A Targaryen isolated in the Vale, and a dragon just shows up there. Does this not seem ordained by the gods? Like she's the only Targaryen there, and it's kind of unheard of that a dragon would even go there. That seems like the heavens are arranging things for you. and since she's the only Targaryen there, who else, like, it has to be her. Like, who else can she imagine it's for? So it's the same line as before. If the gods have called her to greater things, who is she to gainsay that which is laid before her? It's not quite as clear because the dragon isn't like right there, but not too far away. And part of her wants it to be true, right? She wants to have a real part to play in the war, as she said. She would love to have a dragon bigger than her sister, I think, as well, and bigger than a lot of other people's too. We don't know how big it is, but Baela's dragon is small. Jace's dragon is small. It would definitely be bigger than those two at the very least. Beyond that, don't know.
I think she needs to be careful what she wishes for.
Yeah. This doesn't have to go well. You're right. You're absolutely right to be suspicious. This could be a tragic tale of her trying too hard. That would absolutely fit. It would not be pleasant, but you could see it happening.
You made me think of something, just considering that, this young, I don't know, relatively innocent girl who is charged with the care of these baby dragons and baby humans and is going off to safety. But say she gets this dragon, what's she going to do?
Good
Burn
question.
some people alive, right? Like, that's the thing. And like, what kind of
enemies.
person does that change her into?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about the parallel that we see with Alicent, who on some level, Kristen Cole is trying to protect her from having to make decisions about who lives and dies. And she's swimming in a pool, trying to find some relief from the stress of her life. And then here's Rhaenyra sending people to their burning deaths, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're living very different lives now. And I'm not sure which one I would rather be in. One person has more control, but one person has worse nightmares.
Yeah, it's water and fire instead of ice and fire.
Yep, white gown versus black and red. Yeah, or Aaron realness in this case. But another thing about Rhaena is that she might have a little extra confidence because she's apparently tried Silverwing, Vermithor, and Seasmoke, and none of them killed her. Although apparently it was close.
It was close, yeah.
So she has survived these before. She has at least some reason to think, well, I got through it once. Maybe I can survive this one. Even though this is a wild dragon, which means it's never been ridden before. So it's hasn't been kept by the dragon keepers. Yeah, a lot more danger in a dragon like this. It's like
no saddle.
Yeah,
but Dany never had a saddle in Game of Thrones.
I didn't even think of the no saddle. Yeah,
but like Dany didn't have a saddle in her on Game of Thrones, and she got around it. So
it's true. It can be done.
She was able. You can fly the dragon without a saddle, but can you fight another dragon without a saddle?
Dany didn't do that.
Yeah,
well, sort of did. That was different.
Yeah,
she wasn't flying around. They weren't flying around.
One other thought on this scene here is, I wonder quite how this plays out. I think the important thing is that she's going to stumble on a dragon, bond with it, da-da-da-da. But I just want to know how the next 5 minutes go when the rest of the party realizes, wait,
where did Rhaena go?
Princess we're supposed to be protecting. Like, do they start a search party? Do they go back to the Vale? Does Jane let them in?
Yeah,
how does this play out exactly?
I think they just go, I miss Baela.
Hey, where's Baela?
Yeah, that's it. They don't care. No one cares. It's like Home Alone, no one notices that Kevin McAllister or whatever is not with them. They just don't even notice. No one's looking out for Rhaena, really.
Like, wait, wasn't there another person here? Wasn't there an older Targaryen different longer hair? Wasn't there a girl? Like, we had a girl here, right?
Realistically, Rhaena is also like in charge enough that she could have just told the people, I was told to do this other thing, go on ahead, and they would just have to listen to her. I don't think that anyone would say boo to her, right?
Yeah.
I don't think she did that, but I think she could have just said that.
She could have, yeah. Okay, let's talk about the final scene, which takes place in a few different places, really. In Council. Starting, Ironrod tells Aemond that the High Tower army has been slowed down by the Beesberries. Of course, we talked about that already in the past episode. The Beesberries are upset because Kristen Cole killed their lord. Understandable. That's the kind of thing you revolt over. Bzz, yeah, he kicked the hive. But Tessarion has taken wing, which is Daeron's dragon. The Blue Queen is her nickname.
I think Aemond looked so displeased at that. Like,
he didn't look happy about it.
Yeah, it looked like they thought he was going to be pleased for some reason, and he just is threatened.
But he probably is pleased, or at least understands the value of that after the scene. Because before the scene, he didn't know what he was up against. And he wouldn't be excited about having other dragons on his side. But after the scene, and he discovers that, actually, the Blacks now have several more dragons, he might be glad of Tessarion, his brother. But we'll see about that. Well, Aemond's reactions in general will be very interesting to see about this. And I do love that Tessarion has taken wing just as the dragon seeds are being sowed. And it's somewhat similar in the book, too. Now, as they're talking, as Ironrod is giving the good news and saying, this Hightower army is going to be unstoppable with a dragon, flying out in front of it and all that, which we'll see about that, but it's certainly a lot more formidable, especially given you can assume that the armies that the Hightower army is facing do not have dragons of their own, so...
Tessarion is a small dragon, right? Like,
yes. Smaller
than Jace's even. Now, so
maybe about the same size, roughly. Maybe a little bigger, maybe a little smaller. It's not clear.
I don't want to diminish it too much, because it can still fly and breathe fire. So that's huge for the sake of intelligence gathering, just seeing how far away are the troops and maybe an ambush at night, or it's just the threat of it is a significant multiplier to the force of an army. But it's vulnerable, right? It's not unstoppable like these other huge dragons.
You're absolutely right. Scales harden over time. Like Balerion, like an arrow would never pierce Balerion scales. An arrow would probably never pierce Vhagar's scales. The younger you get, though, like Melee's also probably pretty immune. But yeah, you get to those younger dragons, like you say, their scales are not super hard yet. And they could be pierced by arrows, bolts, and other things.
And not just the dragons themselves, but the rider. A bigger dragon is more of a shield for the rider on its back, but a smaller dragon is a more vulnerable target.
Good
the rider is a more vulnerable target, too.
Absolutely true. So as they're talking, this commotion occurs. They're kind of trying to ignore it as Ironrod is finishing his relation of the news. But there's cries of dragon, dragon, and they're like, uh-oh. And Aemond goes and looks on the balcony, and Larys and Ironrod share a look like, uh-oh, is it sea smoke? Did we screw up? Well, I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm sure that's what the look between them had something to do with that. I would also like to see the 5 minutes after this scene, like Sean said. What does Ironrod and Larys say? Aemond goes and rides off, and we follow him. But Larys and Ironrod could be like, oh, that's not sea smoke. What dragon is that? They might not have seen Silverwing. Silverwing hasn't flown maybe even during their lifetimes. So it's entirely possible they've never seen this dragon before, but they would know that it's not sea smoke if they got a good enough look at it.
Although I will point out, I think I said it earlier too, that they're both kind of a blue, gray, silver dragon. So I feel that if there were two dragons to get confused, it would be these two, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Or maybe two red ones or something like that, like Melees and Caraxes from a distance, maybe.
Yeah, maybe those two
but
until
still,
you see the neck, but then you're like, oh.
It depends. Like Larys, I would expect to know the dragons fairly well because it's intelligence, But you're not wrong that there could still be a mistake here by
Larys might
perception.
have bad vision. He doesn't have good long distance vision. He doesn't wear glasses.
How strong is his eyesight? Yeah. So Aemond runs off to go get Vhagar. He's ready to fight. He's ready to go. It takes him a minute to get there, though. He's got to ride outside the city. And by the time he gets to Vhagar and gets her aloft, Silverwing's already headed back. So let's talk about this for a minute, because Silverwing flying over the city, this is just fun, right? He's just like, woo! It's flying around. It's like, hey, this is very relatable. Like, if you get a dragon your first day, it's probably what you do. Just go out and take it for a spin like you would your new car. Just have a great time. Here's his weird hand gestures again, by the way. Look at that. He's just like, it's not, he's like, one finger is down. Like, this isn't Earth where he's hanging loose.
Rock on.
Yeah, he's saying rock on, right? It's so funny. I love this guy. So yeah, he's just having a good time, but maybe hoping his friends see him, maybe, I don't think this was some plan. But Aemond doesn't know that. Aemond's very suspicious. He's a battle planner. It might even look like what he did with Rook's Rest. Like, send a dragon out as bait, lure him, and then ambush him. And I think that's what's on his mind, among other things, as he chases this dragon back to Dragonstone and says, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go any farther. And then he probably sees those other dragons there and is like, okay, I'm definitely not going now.
This is the funniest scene to me, by the way. Like, the very concept of it, the idea that, say, Ulf has no idea how badly he just taunted Aemond, how badly he just taunted Aemond and pissed him off right there. He's just clueless. I wonder if Ulf even perceives of the fact that he was chased away. Like, did he even see Vhagar behind him? I don't know, right? And like, Aemond is like so mad right here, and Ulf is just having the time of his life. I love it. I love it so much. And I do wonder, do you think he sees more than two? Do you think Aemond sees more than Silverwing here?
Yes, that's why he turns around. Yeah.
I disagree. I don't think so. And for a couple reasons. I thought he did it first, but just watching it back, I could not see another dragon at all. It's far away. And I'm like pausing the screen and slow fast forward.
He said he could see in the BTS. They say he can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. You can't tell that he sees it, but he does. Yeah. That's why he backs off. Yeah.
Even if he couldn't, though, I still can see why he would turn away. There's a number of reasons. In fact, one, King's Landing has scorpions. You think Dragonstone doesn't?
They might.
And think how Vhagar successfully took out 2 other dragons was popping up behind a cliff. Well, the whole island is a cliff.
Good point.
Like, this could easily be a trap in a million different ways, including just a distraction to get away from King's Landing. And there's another dragon there now. Like, there's a million reasons he's got to go back and regroup and get more information and not just thrust himself into what could be a trap or be running away from what could be a trap.
And he's just got all this new information. He's like, whoa, our whole war strategy maybe has to change now. Like, he needs to tell his council, even though that's maybe not the way he acts. It's still a consideration, you know.
I don't know if Ulf necessarily even decided to go to King's Landing.
No.
Silverwing might have just done that. Or maybe Silverwing did it because Silverwing could feel that Ulf wanted that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I don't think Ulf was able to tell Silverwing what to do or where to go at all. And they just have that bond and knew where he was from. And Silverwing has been there and knows it.
Yeah.
I thought at first that it might have been a plan that Rhaenyra might have said, you fly there, or lure him back, we'll fly, But I noticed that Rhaenyra still had soot on her face and the same dress that she was wearing. And Ulf still he's disheveled with soot. So I think this is just
right after. Yeah, totally agree.
Maybe an hour or 2 or something, but not long enough that they met up and formed a plan and he took off, and I don't think he has any control.
This is those proverbial 5 minutes after, for that scene.
Yeah, no, I don't think she's spoken to Ulf. Ulf has spoken to no one since he's bonded with Silverwing.
Good point. Yeah, Ulf has just been flying around ever since he claimed Silverwing, and now he's going to land there, and now they're going to have a conversation.
No one has told Ulf that you're not supposed to land on Dragonstone itself, man. Like,
hey, that fused black stone is stronger. It's stronger.
Here's one other thing. Ulf might have, not that I don't even think he had much control over it, but he might have made things a little bit worse because they've lost some surprise value.
Yes.
Like the idea that they would send a dragon in to lure Vhagar away and other dragons come behind or something like that. Well, now they can't do that. Aemond is aware of this.
They're on notice.
Threat,
you're right.
So,
They know they've lost their huge edge. They're like, oh God, we had the edge, now we don't. So what do we do? And that's a big thing that, is presumably something that will come up in episode 8 and probably going into season 3 as well. I doubt it'll all be resolved in one episode, right? And the episode ends with them kind of facing down, like Rhaenyra can recognize what dragon that is. Probably it's pretty easy to tell, like what other big old dragon could that be? Almost certainly Vhagar with the holes in its wings, She could think it was Vermithor, but she has Vermithor with her. You know what I mean? She's like that's right behind me. Dragon. And the dragons are roaring. It's like a big dragon chorus, big dragon song. They're not really harmonizing. I would criticize the tuning of their. No, I'm just kidding. This dragon. They need to work together a little more, huh?
And that's a book quote, right?
Yes, the dragons roared together.
All the dragons roared as one.
Yeah, all the dragons roared as one. That's right.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's a quote.
And the episode started that way, right?
Yeah, it started with Cyrax roaring and ends with Cyrax roaring, and a
little book ending there,
which is funny. But also, we don't see sea smoke in this shot, so we see the gold, the bronze, and the silver.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 dragons that are on display.
But they're in reverse order of size. The bronze dragon's the biggest one. The silver is the medium one.
And the gold is the small. That's funny. You're right. But also, I saw a really funny meme that was like, this is basically the dragons yelling slurs at Vhagar.
Yeah, like, get out of here, bitch,
get
grandma.
Out of here. Yeah,
so now my nose on you.
Yeah. I will taunt you a second time.
So I can't see this image and not just be really, really amused at the idea of Cyrax yelling.
Speaking of that, speaking of dragons talking, that was definitely a joke that popped in my mind when Rhaenyra says, "It must be the dragon who speaks." It's like, well, hey, I'm Vermithor. Thanks for the introduction there, Rhaenyra. Now, what I want to get into is eating about 75% of y'all, and I like my meat cooked, so get ready. Yeah. Yeah. Which dragon would have the French accent there from Monty Python? Would it be Silverwing?
Vermithor sounds Frenchish.
Does it? I don't know what it sounds like. It comes from George's favorite on-screen dragon that wasn't made by him. He loves the dragon Vermithrax Pejorative from the movie Dragon Slayer in the early 80s. So we're pretty sure Vermithrax he borrowed that name and chopped it in two and made Vermithor and Vermax, which is, Jace's dragon. He loves the dragon so much he made two of them. So we've gone over what we expect a lot of the reactions to be, or at least we've asked the question, what will the reaction be to characters like Kat and Ulf's friends and Aemond? And we're wondering about Rhaena, and we're wondering about Corlys, Addam, and Alan, and whether their connection will be revealed or when it will be revealed. It seems like it's unlikely to be concealed forever, but you never know, I guess. But I also want to know about the Dragon Keepers and how they'll react to seeing these characters on these dragons that to them are so sacred, and whether this rift with Rhaenyra could get larger. If you have questions for this episode or for the season in general, as always, send them to us, and we may answer them live. Thanks to everyone for supporting us. Thanks to everyone who listened and watched. Sean, you had another take.
There's Dragon Keepers at King's Landing, too.
You're right.
I wonder how they will feel about this. Will Aemond try to find more dragon riders? Are there any dragons or dragon eggs at King's Landing that don't have riders? I don't think there are there?
There's a dragon in King's Landing that has a rider.
When they departed from Driftmark, all three of Aegon, Aemond, and Helena were on their dragons.
Oh.
Yeah, you can only see her silhouette flying away.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
not
like,
a close up.
Okay,
it's pretty
it's hard
weak.
to count that as a meaningful
But
moment with a
technically,
dragon.
we have seen her on it. But just so we know that it happened. Just so we know that it won't be the first time. She has ridden her dragon before. But yeah, it's rare on the show.
What I'm really asking though is this isn't something that Aemond can follow suit with. Like, I'll find my own dragon riders for all the wild dragons. We don't have that option.
Yeah, you're right. They don't have the big stash of eggs, and yeah, they do have the dragon pit. But you're right. There's unless the show has changed something, we're not aware of anything from the books other than what Shea said about Dreamfire being there, which is a significantly sized dragon and could matter, but maybe won't. So, and of course, Tasarian we mentioned, and yeah, there's maybe more dragons out there. We'll have to see, but there's quite a bit of dragon action going on. I'm pretty sure this was the most.
There are other wild dragons. They're just not necessarily easily accessible to Aemond.
Yeah, and of course, with the show, you don't know whether they'll want to use budget on them or not. That's always a thing. They're very expensive. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think this was probably the episode with the most dragon screen time so far. Rook's Rest had perhaps the most exciting dragon action. That's debatable. Certainly dragons fighting each other is a very rare thing. They didn't do that here. But just the number of dragons, Cyrax, Vermithor, Seasmoke, Vhagar, and I'm missing one, Silverwing. We've rarely had this much action from that many dragons. I didn't count the screen time, but I think that's something. And I hope we get a lot more of that. As expensive as it is, we certainly want as much as we can get. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ashea and Sean, as always. Thanks, Joey, Jesse, and Bran for the music and intro for our show. And thanks, Michael Klarfeld, for the maps. You can check out Michael's work at klaradox.de. That's claradox.de. And until next time, we will see you later. And Valar, read us.